Mr. Urban?
Here.
Mr. Willard?
Here.
Ms. Radel?
Here.
Okay.
Any deletions from the voting session agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to remove number 4 off the agenda.
We have a motion to remove item number 4. Is there a second for that? All right, motion fails for lack of a second. Does anybody else have any deletions from the agenda? Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? The agenda is adopted. Then public comment on voting session agenda items only. The first one I have here is Mr. Chomp.
Good evening, Council. I'd like to address agenda items number 3 and 4 with the West Nanticoke Bridge. And I did read that former Council Chair, Ms. Houck, did write a letter, which I'm sure that you'll get around to reading. But in her letter, she does question whether or not state law actually dictates that the allocation of the funds to the redevelopment authority require a guarantor, if that's actually part of state law. So that's one concern I have. The other concern is per the county engineer's office regarding the bridge project. They state that under their, and this is online, alternatives, it says, due to the current state of the bridge, county staff is concerned that the next inspection may result in lower weight limits and or future closure. So my question is, does council really know the true condition of this bridge? Has there been an official inspection completed to ascertain the durability of the bridge and whether or not it can last longer with some repairs that may be much less expensive than actually repairing it? So because of these questions and concerns, I would ask that council perhaps table these agenda items until there can be some further in-depth discussion and study concerning whether this bridge actually does need to be replaced. Thank you.
The other two slips I have here are Ms. Morgan and Mr. Griffin, but they both say non-agenda items. Do you guys want to wait till the end? Okay, great. Any other members of the public that are here or on the Zoom?
Madam Chair, this is Mark Rabo speaking.
Go ahead, Mr. Rebo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a member of the Redevelopment Authority Board, I don't believe that this MOU nor the ordinance serves in the best interest of the Luzerne County residents, as this is not only not the best terms the county or the taxpayers can get. The fact is that the members of the RA board nor yourselves on the council authorized our respective executives to negotiate terms, nor did either governing bodies have an opportunity to scrutinize or allow to amend any cooperation agreement, which no agreement was presented. I would also point out that there was no public hearing afforded to the county residents to give comment and to educate them on the magnitude of the cost of these projects and the ramifications of approving the borrowing under the proposal in front of you. And the RA, if this MOU is adopted, the fact is that the original RFP to award the lending institution the financing of the project was never based on a guarantee by Luzerne County. Furthermore, I don't believe that one state senator has the authority to impose on any local government entities that they must approve any agreement not negotiated by the council and the RA board. It is very disingenuous of Senator Yudichak to tell you and us that if we don't rubber stamp this MOU, that the assembly will pull the funding, thus punishing the county residents for not embracing Yudichak's desire for approval based on a political expedient to reward donors of his campaign at the county's taxpayers' expense. And this is an outrage, and I will not be signing on to this either as a board member or supporting it as a county taxpayer. And I ask you, all of you, the residents of Luzerne County and the county council and the county manager to not go through with this, postpone it or take it off the table. But if you can't take it off the table, postpone this so that way the county council, you guys can put it through the contract review committee or strategic initiatives, whatever you guys want to do, or even invite us, the redevelopment authority board members, to to discuss this further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rabel. Can you turn the volume up on the TV just a little bit? Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see you back there. Any other members of the public? Controller Griffith, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, if I may.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to comment on number 3 and 4 as well. The concern that I have is we just took number 4 off the agenda. I don't know what the purpose of taking it off the agenda is. I think council
We
needs.
didn't.
Oh, you did not. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
No.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so number 3 and 4 that I will comment on. I think the LSA funding was basically promised to the people of this county to lower taxes, real estate taxes, way back when this whole gambling thing happened. We haven't realized any of that since this whole thing's happened. In fact, it's become a fund for either the politically connected or the people that need money for miscellaneous projects to get funding for that. And I don't think that that's what the intent of the gaming money was for. At least that's not what we were promised as citizens. I think we should use that money to pave the roads of the county first, because it can be used as part of the LSA money, can be used to pave the roads, fix the infrastructure of the county first, before we dole out $40 million to a project that will only turn out to be a legacy for some people who have a project in hand that need to have a bridge fixed. We have a Nanticoke bridge that has a 15-ton weight limit that is currently in use. Clearly, it has a 15-ton weight limit. And then we have a bridge in West Pittston that is totally closed and we can't use it at all. But we're going to take $40 million of our money and we're going to allocate it to fix the bridge in Nanticoke, which makes absolutely no sense. If we're going to take $40 million, let's fix a bridge that's out of service that could eliminate some of the congestion down in the northern part of the county where we could actually do that. The whole purpose of the redevelopment authority, first of all, on the agenda, they're going to approve an MOU and the council hasn't even had a chance to vote on it yet. They moved the agenda to tomorrow because they know that the council didn't vote on it yet. They already put it on the agenda. I mean, talk about putting the cart before the horse here. I mean, this is just ridiculous. I encourage council members to vote no on both of these items and send a clear message to the redevelopment authority, as well as anybody who's trying to use this LSA money for either political gain or to set up a legacy for themselves, that you're not going to tolerate that. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any other members of the public that wish to speak on agenda items? Okay, I have 2 emails that were sent to the public comment email address, asked to be read at the beginning of the meeting, so just bear with me while I read these. The first one is from Miss Linda Howe. Council members and Mr. Robertson, I'm ready to express my disbelief that Luzerne County by an act of council would even consider guaranteeing a $55 million loan to total that does not include interest. As a 10-year member of the Luzerne County Council and former chair and vice chair of the council, I was one of the charter members of the home rule government who worked diligently to reduce Luzerne County indebtedness. Over the past 10 years, the county council members have consistently and diligently worked and were successful in achieving a reduction of county debt through refinancing and careful budgeting and management. The hard work of what it currently allows the county to see a light at the end of the $400 million tunnel of debt that we entered in 2012. The RFP for the LSA project clearly states the redevelopment authority nor the county of Luzerne will be the guarantor for repayment of the LSA bonds or long-term bank debt. The only source of funds for repayment is the LSA funds from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania through CFA to the redevelopment authority. It is my understanding that the selected bank offered a rate based on Luzerne County being guarantor of the loan. That offer should never have been considered since it is inconsistent with what is clearly stated in the RFP. I also understand from media accounts that our elected state officials have said that without the county guarantee, the allocation of the LSA funds is in jeopardy. Consider this: nothing in the fiscal code that authorizes the redevelopment authority to receive these funds requires a guarantor. And if someone is trying to tell you that the allocation of funds depends on a guarantor, in spite of the fact that it is not required in the fiscal code, then the real question is, what are our elected officials who represent Luzerne County at the state level are doing to protect our right to receive those funds and to use them for much needed projects, especially repairing our roads and bridges? Who is trying to create a prerequisite for Luzerne County to receive funds that we are legally entitled to receive, and why? Finally, recall that municipal authorities are created to be independent entities that operate separately from county government. Nowhere in the fiscal code is there mention of involvement of county government in the allocation and disbursement of funds to the redevelopment authority per section 1724 IEE1. The county is not involved in the debt assurance for redevelopment authority, nor in the application or receipt of funds to repay that debt, and we should not be. I encourage you as prudent stewards of county finances to vote against committing Luzerne County to guarantee what will be approximately $70 million in debt. To do otherwise will begin to undo the financial progress of Luzerne County that has been made since the inception of Commonwealth. Thank you for your consideration. Linda House. Our next one is from Claudia Glennon from Salem Township. I request this letter be read aloud and included in Luzerne County Council record. $40+ million or 73% of the $55 million infrastructure loan is being requested to replace the existing Nanticoke West Nanticoke Bridge. What is the proposed cost to repair and upgrade vice replace? Using 73% of funds for one county project does not appear prudent nor fiscally responsible. The real push for this bridge comes from politicians, Bourdain, Nestero, and their proposed gas to gasoline plant in the Glen line area. A plant that will already be receiving $6.5 million per year tax break, a plant that most Luzerne Co residents know nothing about, a plant for which no impact studies have been proposed or conducted. How will air and groundwater be impacted? How will property values be impacted? How will community services, fire, police, roads be impacted? How will noise, dust, vibration impact residential and commercial structures, residents and customers? How will recreation areas and quality of life be impacted? How will health and personal well-being, immediate and long-term, be impacted? None of the above questions have even been addressed, let alone answered. Yet $44 million is being proposed to be spent for a new multi-lane bridge. What about the other 300 bridges and roads in Luzerne County? How does this serve public safety as stated by Senator Udechak? I request council provide constituents the answers before allocation. Hashtag follow the money to learn who is really being served. Okay, that concludes public comment. We'll move on to, oh, do you want to now take this?
Today we held an executive session before this meeting concerning settlement of a litigation matter.
Thank you, Attorney Steve.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions opposed? Motion passes. Number 1, motion to adopt resolution authorizing the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds to repair Sweet Valley Road in Ross and Union Townships.
So moved. Second, Thornton.
Motion by Mr. Lovett, second by Mr. Thornton. Roll call.
Mr. Venus?
Yes.
Mr. LaScavitch?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Mrs. McDermott? Yes. Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion passes. Number 2, motion to adopt resolution authorizing the use of American Rescue Plan Act funds to make repairs at the Luzerne County Correctional Facility.
So moved.
Okay.
I'll be
we'll do-
second.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. LaScavitch?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott? Yes. Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Venus?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion passes. Number 3, motion to adopt resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between Luzerne County and the Luzerne County Redevelopment Authority for the reconstruction of the Nanticoke West Nanticoke Bridge. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Question? I thought in the memorandum of understanding, it was it also, it was to include the bank's agreement to absorb the loan costs.
Sure, we have
We have that?
Attorney Kostolansky, Mr. Sweats, Attorney Steen, all on hand to answer any questions regarding item number 3.
And that would be a bank official from Fidelity or the other bank is here to say they would accept those absorption of those fees.
I don't know.
Yes, we do.
Okay,
Okay,
okay. Go ahead.
you guys want to take the podium? I don't know how many questions I have.
Yeah, it's something I can take back. Ooh, I'm sorry. It's something I can take back and obviously report back to you. Not really, can't answer that right now today.
All right, would appreciate if you answered.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ryan McGowan, Fidelity Bank. Thank you. It is something I can take back to our bank and to additionally to FNCB and get back to everyone in a
Okay,
short amount of time.
I understand that, but to pass this motion tonight, we would need that information. So We brought this up, I think, about 3-4 weeks ago. I'm not sure why banks didn't come forward with an answer by now.
I can't answer it.
Yeah.
Typically, financing costs are built into the loan, as you know from doing your bond issues. That's the way it's been planned from the beginning. Changes to that, obviously, the banks would have to consider. It's not typical for a bank to absorb costs of doing
Well, Attorney
financing.
Kozlowski, I've been involved in the past with bond issues like this and loan issues from municipalities, and they did absorb costs. So I was just wondering, with a loan this size of 55 million, asking for, I think it was less than 250,000 in loan costs to be ignored by the bank, but we don't have an answer on that tonight, correct?
No,
Okay.
not this time.
All right, thanks.
What will the rates be? Because I guess the answer we received back today was at closing, we'll learn the rate.
Yeah,
We
so,
originally had-
yeah, so we initially had provided a rate that was, I believe, held for about 30 to 60 days when the initial RFP went out. What we're looking at now, just based on today's market conditions, obviously that can change, depending on if this was to proceed or not. We're looking around 4%. That would be non-bank qualified tax exempt 4 to about 4.5. One thing with that though is if rates start to drop, obviously you take advantage of any decrease, in market conditions. If it was to increase, there would have to be an adjustment made on that side as well. But as of today, that's kind of where we're at.
And if I may, I'm Brian Koslowski with Stevenson. One thing I would like to clarify in the MOU and what we've been talking about is the Nanticoke West Nanticoke Bridge. The reason why that's in there today is to start this process and really to go from tonight to closing on the loan. There's a number of things that we need to do. If the county decides that they want to guarantee the loan, obviously we have to do the guarantee ordinance, and that takes a month and a half to get that done and get it filed with DCD. We have the authority process to go through, and we also have the application to the CFA for the approval of the project. So really, we need to identify a project for the use of the funds so that we can submit it. The authority can approve it. The CFA can submit or can approve it as well. And that's going to take months to get that in place. That doesn't mean that's the only project that can be done. It's just we need something to start that process to start moving this along. If the council decides, and really that's one of the things the MOU is doing, is creating that partnership between the authority and council to identify projects. This is going to allow the council to direct the use of those LSA funds, that 55 or 51 or $50 million, whatever is available, for projects that the county wants to pursue. If the bridge project, if you still want to pursue that and it comes in under the amount that's necessary, council decides what the rest of the funds go for. If you decide through that design process that you need to do something else at a higher priority, it's just a matter of taking that project in, resubmitting it to the CFA. So there's still some flexibility, but if we don't have identified something today, we just can't continue along the road. So that's why that project is in there. And that's why we included the language of such other projects as the council or the county and the authority approve. So there is some flexibility going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Urban had his hand raised first, and then Mr. Rowland.
So what I'm taking real issue with is that this council was never conferred prior to any project coming on our radar. I mean, this bridge project just happened and it just magically appears in front of council. No one asked anybody on this council in the past, what are your top 10 projects or what kind of project can we get involved with? I take issue with the RFP process. I mean, the initial RFP says that there's no guarantee in there. And then terms have changed through the RA somehow that, they award 2 banks that require a guarantee. And that to me is wrong. I think it needs to be kicked back to the RA. I think they need to go back and rebid this out. To my recollection, there was another bank that was involved that did not guarantee or didn't require the county to guarantee any type of backing.
Well,
I mean, you haven't come here and answered any questions as far as debt. How is this going to impact our credit rating? I think we need to get PFM in here and have them put on a presentation. I think you're putting the cart before the horse, like Mr. Griffith had stated. We, as the body of council, are the municipality here. If we want something done, we will ask the RA to do it for us, and we should have partnered up long ago. It's not throw it in front of us, put a gun to our head and tell us how to vote, or basically insinuate that we're going to pass something by a majority vote because some outside force decides to change the law at the state to go and divvy this money up somehow and bring it in front of us and thinking that we're just gonna just rubber stamp everything that someone else wants. I take issue with that. As a council member, I'm a part of the electorate, you know, representing the electorate here and the public. You're asking us to back $55 million. You know, it's really 75 million. If over 25 years, that's going to be 6 governors. I mean, things can change from a bureaucracy standpoint at the state over time. I think it's almost like loan sharking. I mean, I know who the 2 banks are, I know who sits on the boards, and I know how they dole out money for different, you know, campaigns. The other thing is we have probably, what, $96 million in fidelity and FNCB back. Maybe we should pull that money out if you don't want to work with us on the fee, and maybe we should RFP, you know, where we put our money in our checking accounts to get, you know, I mean, you guys are using our money to probably borrow that out at higher interest. So to forego about $250,000 is probably not the best. You know, I mean, but I would recommend taking that 96 million and putting in other banks at this point. And I might draw up a resolution and pull that money. Because I take real issue that other outside forces are trying to drive this train. I mean, we are council, we pick the projects, we pick the top 10 list or top 5. You know, I don't think Nacero is even going to come to fruition. I haven't seen a representative from Nacero yet. I mean, it was announced a Friday before election day. I called the city manager down in Arizona where it was announced, you know, in one of their locations. They have yet to see a shovel being put into the ground, and this is after 2 years. You're talking a $6 billion project with inflation right now, probably 8 to 10 billion. I don't see a Jeff Bezos. I don't see an Elon Musk. I don't see a Bill Gates writing out a big check to invest in Luzerne County. I don't see them writing out a big check in Penwell, Texas, or in Arizona. You know, I mean, they haven't even put a shovel in the ground in Penwell yet, in their own home territory. And where are they going to get the capital to put 3 simultaneous plants? That technology doesn't even exist in this country at this point. It only exists in Turkestan.
Mr. Urban, if I could just interject quickly.
Go ahead.
I understand you're upset about Nacero and politics, but
It-
Mr. McGowan and Mr. Kaslansky are not.
I really don't
involved in
care.
Nacero. So if you want to
This
speak
this
to the
has,
public, but instead of maybe accusing them of being the cause of that, that could be directed, you know, to the audience and maybe not
No,
to the
not
people at the
directed.
podium who are just here to help answer our
they're
questions.
here to make money and off the backs of Luzerne County taxpayers.
I just have a follow-up earlier. The memorandum of understanding, to my knowledge, required certain language. One of it being, and I'm not sure it's in there, maybe Mr. Attorney Skeen could help me out. One item was, it was to be in there that every project that the redevelopment authority would proceed with, county council would have to pass on it, agree to it. And I think it says in here, the county already agrees to it. But, okay. And the second item was the fee, the bank loan cost. That for sure was supposed to be in the MOU. And I don't see it in there, and you said you don't have it. So for that reason alone, I think the memorandum, I'm not talking about item number 4 in the agenda, I'm talking about item number 3, I think should be tabled for tonight, because we don't have those 2 guarantees in the memorandum. That was the purpose of the memorandum of understanding, those 2 items. And it's really sketchy and vague. So,
Well, and if I could just address that a little bit, just to once again provide a little bit of flexibility. One of the things we were trying to accomplish with the MOU is, once again, just to start the process, because it does take some time. So identifying that bridge, and that's why it's identified, you have an LSA application for it, so we can start that. It doesn't, once again, it doesn't mean that that's the project, that we don't have flexibility. We built that into the resolution. We have an ordinance that was coming up. If we want to massage the language on the ordinance to make it more clear, those are all formalities that we need to go once we know that the county wants to pursue this. It doesn't make sense to do all that documentation if the county council does not want to go through with the guarantee. So it's really, we have the flexibility of that drafting, making sure the language in the ordinance is right, making sure the language in the guarantee you're comfortable with. So we can build in that language of any other projects as directed by the county. And that was, the intent was, it's in here. But all we're doing tonight is the submittal of that application
just-
for the one bridge.
Just to clarify, Attorney Kozlowski, and I'm not trying to belabor this, but memorandum of understanding was not brought to the floor by any party on that side of the room over there, not the redevelopment authority or anyone else, not the bank, not anybody. I'm the one who initiated the memorandum of understanding. I said, these are the two items. I sent an email out to everybody probably 4 weeks ago. These are the two items we need to see in this document, the two I just stated.
Mhm.
I don't really see them, so that's just me. I don't know how everybody else feels here. That's just how I feel. Thank you. Overall, item number 4 is a whole different animal. We should talk separately.
Point of issue that I have is there's hundreds of miles of county road, there's hundreds of bridges. We're gonna focus the majority of this project on one project. Let's just say we're gonna come up with a list of 10 or 15 roads that we want to put in place of the bridge. I mean, it seems like this is focused solely on the bridge, and there's so many residents out there who utilize roads all across the county that I think are being shafted by this. I think this is a perfect opportunity to help a mass amount of residents in the county instead of a bridge that sits a half mile up the road from another bridge. I live in Hanover, I utilize both bridges, I prefer Route 20. I just feel that this, if we're gonna spend $55 million, it should be focused on a majority of residents, not just one little section of the county. That's the issue that I have.
Attorney Kaslowski, I just want to clarify. So we're using the bridge because it matches the scope of the amount of funding. Once we get this money, we can change the scope to a different project. Is that correct?
Yes, we can't move to, the way the legislation is written, all the projects have to be approved by the CFA before we can go to closing. So we need to present something to them just to keep the ball rolling on this. And that's why I say the design and development of that bridge is going to be ongoing. Other projects that you may identify that are more important, this just allows us to continue on the financing approach to get to the point where we have, and let's just say it's $50 million available. If you decide at any point that you've changed your priorities, we just have to go back through that CFA process. All that money is not going to be spent until projects are designed, bid out, developed, but we can't move anything without meeting the requirements of the act and submitting things to the CFA, and they meet, I think, quarterly. So, it's not something that you can do overnight.
So at the end of the day, though, it is $55 million that the county can use how they see it based on what the priority is for infrastructure.
For infrastructure and subject to the approval of CFA, although to my knowledge, that process is not.
We're not moving forward just with the bridge project. We're not tied to funding it.
No, but if we don't have a project, then we don't have anything to submit. Exactly.
Now, what,
Yeah, and no, I'm sorry, Dan. The one thing that I need from a tax standpoint, though, to do a tax exempt issue is we need to have identified at closing the use of those funds so that we can have the expectation that we're going to spend that in a 3-year period so that we can do a good tax opinion. Now, that list can be $200 million worth of projects, but we just have to keep in mind that at some point before we get to closing, whether it's the bridge and another 10 projects, we have to show that we have projects that we want to do. So.
Now that the interest rates are different than what we proposed 3 months ago, how's that going to affect the bottom line as far as how much funds will be available?
Obviously, that's going to change with rates have gone up. We are
Right.
aware of that. So when we initially looked at it last week, I think we were roughly between around 50 to 51 million. So there's a little bit of a difference there now.
Lost about $4 million basically,
Roughly,
as far as access to money.
yes. Now, if rates start dropping again, that number's going to go up. I think what happened, and we don't believe they're going to, unfortunately, but
I'm happy about it.
yeah.
It is what it is.
No, absolutely. But what was put in there, I think, was for up to an amount. So we needed to find, an up to amount. At that point, given where rates were, we wanted to make sure that I think that we were able to provide something that was bountiful for the projects that we picked.
The other
So,
question I had is, I think there were 2 estimates I saw regarding that particular project, which would be that bridge, somewhere between 40 and 45. I think Mr. Flesh had that estimate. And then I understand there's another estimate of $50 million out there. I think that was the MPO, their list. That's what it is. there? Do we have any firm number or everything subject to studies, et cetera, before they come up with a firm number?
I don't know if I could comment on that.
I don't, but I probably not, I don't think it's for you, it's probably Mr. Question.
Repeat the question, please.
I've seen at least two different estimates for that project. I think the estimate I saw was attributed to the county was $40 to $45 million. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the estimate that supposedly has been talked about at the NPO is $50 million.
That could be 50 million. It depends. The estimate we got is based on current numbers. Their 50 million could be based on a different number.
When was that estimate attained?
The 40 million is what updated through PennDOT's ECMS system based on current numbers.
Okay,
That's
so
for construction, another 5 million probably for design.
40
MPOs,
million for construction, 5 million for design.
Probably, yeah.
What you're telling me?
yes. Yeah. The 50 million of PennDOT, any project run through PennDOT usually costs a couple of bucks more, just because their approval process and the submissions, and ask any consultant, they'll tell you. Another 5 million to put it through PennDOT, same project, that's not unreasonable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. Mitchell Savage.
I just have one question. The original RFP stated that we would be the guarantor. Is there any possible way that we can be sued from another bank for not having the same opportunity people have? Because they were given a rate based on not being back, which I'm sure would be a higher rate versus being back, it should be a lower rate.
Well, and remember, that request was really to solicit proposals for financing. So none of them were hard and fast terms of interest rates or requirements. So the underwriters, I think we talked about this the last time, the underwriters that put in proposals all had the bonds being issued based upon the Commonwealth and the CFA's bond rating. That's not the case. They don't support the deal, and they just assume that any shortfalls would be made up by the Commonwealth or the CFA. So those underwriting proposals didn't work at all. The other bank proposal, without mentioning the county guarantee, they asked all of the same questions about the structure and who supports this without actually going to the last question of, hey, if nobody else is backing it, we may want a county guarantee. So there was all that flexibility in those proposals without, answers. There were assumptions made. They were really just, hey, we want to help, we want to participate. These are some of the concerns we have. These are some of the considerations. Fidelity just happened to say, given what we know about the legislation and what we've looked at so far, we think we need this. So
Why wasn't it put in the original agreement though? Luzerne County ruled back as well.
in the original RFP, well, I can't speak to the authority on that, but you would always ask the RFP for the most lenient terms to see what you get back and then go from there. So you wouldn't necessarily offer that up in the RFP process.
Was there any chance of that happening without that? Without this guarantee?
There was one underwriting proposal that talked about, they thought they could get it done, but no, that was another underwriting group, but it was also based upon, junk bond standards, the interest rates were much higher, the underwriting fee was much higher, and you didn't have as much flexibility. The bond market, there's prepayment penalties, there's less flexibility on how you can structure with taxable and tax exempt. So there were a number of things that led to the Fidelity proposal, one of which is the flexibility it provided in terms of splitting the deal up, doing it as a drawdown loan to save interest costs, and having that flexibility.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to dovetail off Mr. LaScavenge's comment because I go back to Ms. Haug's comment that you read tonight. I just want to reiterate one short little passage. She writes, the RFP for the LSA project clearly states, quote, the redevelopment authority, this is in the RFP now, the redevelopment authority nor the county of Luzerne will be a guarantor for repayment of the LSA bonds or long-term bank debt. It says right there. The only source of funds for repayment is the LSA funds from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania through CFA to the redevelopment authority, unquote. Again, Mr. LaScavenge kind of asked the question, that language in and of itself, Attorney Skeen, can't some of the banks that put their proposals in may have read that to the letter and said, okay, there's no guarantee by the county, because it says right in the RFP, there's no guarantee by the county taxpayers. So maybe their bid didn't accurately reflect the later numbers the county received from the other banks. I don't know, I'm not an attorney. I don't know if there could be any kind of ramifications or repercussions down the road. I just wish the RFP was more clearly stated. And that language there to me seems to clearly eliminate the county of Luzerne from having any kind of guarantee behind the loan. I don't know. Now, I hope the public doesn't take this to mean I'm for or against building a new bridge. I'm not commenting on that at all. I'm looking at liability with the RFP, and I'm not commenting on the Cerro, whether I'm against or for it here. I'm just trying to clarify this. When we get done discussing it, I'd wait till the discussion's over. I'd like to meet everybody halfway, and maybe we make an amendment to the MOU when everybody's just done discussing.
I would actually put a motion to amend this MOU and take out the Nanticoke, West Nanticoke Bridge and put the Pittston Bridge in there, West Pittston Bridge. That would be a project that's viable.
Motion, is there a second?
So I want to take the Nanticoke, West Nanticoke Bridge off of this project and then add the Pittston, West Pittston Bridge as the bridge that gets the funding.
There's no second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Scavenge. Okay, on the question,
On the,
how does this affect?
on the question,
Yeah,
okay,
we could, try to ask the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I don't even know who would answer this. How does this affect, like, everything else that's in the works for the other bridge? Does the application change, like, we have to change the entire application here? This changes the timeline? Like, what are the steps if this happens?
We were just told it was formality to have those names in there. So if that's the case and we listed as Pittston, West Pittston, it shouldn't matter if it's just a formality.
Well,
Right, but-
it is a little bit, it is a little bit more than that. And
Then why did we use the word formality? We can change the project.
you can, and I just want, I just want to get into that. What we have to do, since we're submitting this to the CFA as a project to continue along this process, it has to be a project that would use $50 million of funding or $55 million of funding. We can't submit, $5 million project and proceed to closing. There are better people to talk about the West Pittston Bridge and the cost of that. It was my understanding that that was much further out, and the county's portion of that project may only be $5 million. I would need a whole set of other projects to be able to submit to the CFA at this point to continue along the timeline. And if those projects are 5 years out before they get to the design and the development, we really can't do the financing. There's no reason to do the financing at this point. So it's really a matter of how you want to do it, to continue this process along the way, or just stop and identify, $50 million of projects and proceed from that point.
Mr. Thornton?
yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding that proposed amendment on the floor, the reality is the county bridge called the Water Street Bridge, but it's the Fireman's Memorial Bridge, actually. It is currently, and we've already passed this with a resolution of motion here in the past, currently being built, constructed, designed, and constructed and funded by the state DOT. The only obligation the county has is somewhere between 1.2 million and 1.5 million, which is coming from ARP money. And that we already voted on, and the state has to do those two bridges together because of the hydrology in the river, the engineering, building two bridges so close together. They have to do both of them. It's called the bundling project. They didn't do it out of the goodness of their heart. It's for all kinds of safety reasons. So, and that we already passed, and that funding's already in place. So that's why I would discourage, I know the motion is second, I would discourage passing that specific amendment.
Well, the reason I seconded only was because I thought it was a formality. That was the only reason. I thought it didn't matter what name was on there.
I just wouldn't want
Call the
to,
question.
interrupt the,
Amen.
on the amendment. Yeah, on the amendment.
This is removing it only from the MOU, not the resolution. Correct?
Just the amendment to edit the MOU, yeah.
Mr. Lombardo,
No.
Mrs. McDermott? No. Mr. McGinley,
No.
Mr. Mitchell,
No.
Mr. Perry,
No.
Mr. Thornton,
No.
Mr. Urban.
Yes.
Mr. Lovett,
No.
Mr. Venus,
No.
Mr. LaScavitch,
No.
Ms. Radel.
No.
Motion to table this MOU.
There's a motion to table. Motion fails for lack of a second. Can we have a roll call on agenda item number 3?
Well, could I suggest make a motion to amend the MOU,
Go ahead.
please? I'd like to, in an effort to meet people halfway here, I'd like to amend the MOU so it includes specific language stating that the lending authority, the banks would absorb the lending cost currently somewhere between $240,000 and $250,000.
Second.
And that question is,
Go ahead, Mr. McGinley.
gentleman here, Springtown, Mr. Gowan, he said we don't have an answer to that this time, right?
Correct.
So by putting that amendment in there, they come back and say, no, we can't do that, or we can be part of that. Now that nullifies the amendment, it nullifies the MOU. I think we could ask for a separate resolution or something about the banking costs. And then move on from there. We have to decide whether we want to proceed one way or the other, up or down. We've been waiting for how many months now? Because of the fact that we've been waiting, the interest rates have changed, and we all understand that. But we've lost $4 million, essentially, that we could have had access. And, you know, if the interest rates keep rising or whatever, we're gonna lose more. So we don't get an application together, or we don't approve the MOU, everything's dead in the water.
Valid points, Mr. McGinley. I agree with you. However, I know I brought this up 4 weeks ago, that cost had to be absorbed by the banks for me to consider this. The fact that we're here 4 weeks later and there's no answer tells me they looked at it, they ignored the question, they ignored the issue. And I'm asking about good faith bargaining here. That's all. I don't think when we're borrowing 55 million from the bank, that's too much to ask for $250,000. And that's why I think it should not have been ignored. It upsets me that it was. And that we have no answer tonight. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Gowan, was your bank aware of that request?
We did have a discussion, I think we were here maybe 6-7 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Nothing
we had
else
a
was,
discussion?
nothing else was brought to us since then. So I was not aware that was.
Well, that was sent out in an email to all the county officials here and to county administration for at least 4 or 5 weeks ago. And it was to have been included. Again, the memorandum of understanding was initiated by us on county council, not by the banks or not by anyone else. And that was the most paramount item, I would say. And now somehow it got lost in the shuffle.
Mr. McGowan, if we put this in the MOU saying that the cost will be absorbed and your bank cannot do that, like, I don't know how to move forward.
Would have been better if they had the number here tonight, or the yes or no. That would have been great.
Oh, I agree, but we don't, and now we have a
Right.
motion on the floor to make this amendment, and I just don't know what the repercussions are if we can't fulfill that.
I can buy something that's not correct.
Right.
Can't come on the table.
We could have a special meeting next week, late this week, if things get straightened out. But all these things they've been ignored, and now we're getting blamed, the guns to our head, back us in the corner again. If you don't do this now, it's gonna get costly and more costly. This always happens to us here. All these issues were raised a long time ago, and they're unanswered again.
Did you, when the agenda came out, did you see that it was missing on Friday? Like,
No, I
you
did not.
express that to anybody?
I didn't read the whole MOU. I assumed those 2 items were in there because that was the only 2 items we were asking for. That was it in the MOU. Somehow someone got a hold of that and said, no, we're gonna write all this other language in there. but you do whatever you want.
I make a motion to table this till we can get this figured out.
Second. Mr.
No discussion.
There's no there's a motion and a second to table. We can't discuss. Motion and a second to table, roll call.
Ms. McDermott? No. Mr. McGinley?
No.
Mr. Mitchell?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby?
Yes.
Mr. Venus?
Yes.
Mr. LaScavitch?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
No.
Ms. Radel?
No.
5 yes, 6 no.
What's the,
6 no, 5 yes. Okay, so it is not tabled. We have a motion by Ms. McDermott and a second by Mr. Lombardo on number 3. Can we have a roll call vote?
But where are we going?
Oh, we have a minute. Okay,
First by Mr. Thornton, second by Mr. Urban.
Yes.
To put the lending. information.
Lending
okay,
cost.
we have to vote on the amendment to the MOU first. Mr. Thornton made the motion, Mr. Urban made the second. It's editing the MOU to add that the bank would absorb the lending costs. Roll call, this is just the amendment, roll call.
Mr. McGinley?
no?
Mr. Mitchell?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Willoughby?
No.
Mr. Venus?
No.
Mr. LaScavitch?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo?
No.
Ms. McDermott? No. Ms. Radel?
No.
3 yes, 8 no.
8 no, motion fails. Now on the original motion. Roll call.
This is for the resolution, correct?
Yep, to adopt the resolution, approving the MOU.
Hi, Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
I have to abstain. I'm prohibited from voting on tax revenue anticipation notes such as this. I'm in the securities business, and by my license and contract agreements with my employer, I can't pass, suggest, or promote such bonding by municipalities. So I abstain.
Mr. Urban?
No.
Mr. Willoughby?
No.
Mr. Venus?
Yes.
Mr. LaScavitch?
No.
Mr. Lombardo?
Yes.
Ms. McDermott? Yes. Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
3 no, 1 abstention.
7 yes, 3 no, 1 abstention. Thank you, gentlemen, for answering our questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Number 4, motion to adopt resolution requesting a Luzerne County local share account grant from the Luzerne County Redevelopment Authority of the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Finance.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lombardo, second by Mr. Mitchell. Roll call.
Mr. Mitchell?
Well, on the question.
On the
Okay,
question.
okay. Mr. McGinley?
I don't know the proper person. Somebody explain how the funding will go back to the county. Funding will be identified, reimbursement, whatever it might be.
Attorney Constance or Mr. Swets, you guys want to take
Sure.
that?
Although the documents have to be developed, the typical mechanism would be whatever the project is, the redevelopment authority issues the bonds. They will either do it as a drawdown or they'll have all the proceeds at closing. So they'll have those funds available. So as the county goes through the projects on that application and they have costs to submit it to the authority, the authority would use the funds that they have available to pay the county for those costs. So it should just be a matter of the back and forth between those projects.
I think you said, I'm correct, I'm wrong. We would submit an invoice or something, be reimbursed for the work that was done to the authority.
Yes.
The authority would then get funds from.
If it was a drawdown loan, they'd request those funds from the bank and then submit it to the county.
So the Commonwealth Finance Agency isn't involved in that
Not in that process, to my knowledge. Their approval processes of the project itself. And I haven't seen anything in the legislation that would state otherwise. And those mechanics, in terms of the flow of funds.
But the big thing is, we don't have the funds within the county. Any funds would come from the RA.
That's right.
Per invoices, whatever we would submit.
And they could be submitted simultaneously with the bank for their,
Just so
those
that's
are-
clear. Because I think I've told a couple different scenarios there. I thought what you just told me was correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware that the CFA has any involvement other than the initial approval of the projects. You're welcome.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions are not for you.
Okay.
I'll direct these to Mr. Plesh and Mr. Swets. I received a lot of emails over the weekend from county residents, many emails, and I don't have them all here. I'm not going to read them. But I did summarize some of their questions that I saw pop up. And Senator Udicek, I'll probably ask you a question then also, okay? So, Mr. Plesh, what type, well, first of all, let me just go on the record and say the Nacero project and this bridge in Nanticoke, to me, are two separate issues. I don't want to combine them, and I don't like to say one is hinged on the other, although a lot of people believe that. You'll see my questioning bears that out, what I'm saying. What type of bridge and the capacity of this bridge is proposed? I don't know if it's a 2-lane or a 4-lane or, what kind of bridge are they saying is going to be built there?
No, but first of all, we're gonna do a study to tell us what's the best for that area.
Well, that
Right
was
now,
my-
it's 2 lanes front to back. We most likely add a turning lane, 3rd lane at the Route 11 intersection. Be conventional concrete bridge beam, just like 8th Street.
Okay,
No
'cause
trust.
I asked that because I didn't know if it would be something more extravagant, carrying, large tractor trailers, a lot of loading and,
No, we basically will tear out all the piers in the water.
okay,
We'll get a permit to reinstall new piers at a designated span after the
Okay.
design, and it'll be permit load. You can type
Thank-
anything you want over.
thank you. And you answered this one earlier, the estimate of 45 million or 50 million. You already answered that, where that came from. When was the most recent traffic study and traffic count on that bridge performed? I'm talking prior to its reduced loading status in recent times. In other words, when was the last, I'd like to know, just like we know in Pittston, the county-owned bridge carried 8,000 vehicles a day. The one 300 yards away carried 12,000 vehicles a day. Now the one that's PennDOT's bridge is carrying all 20,000 vehicles a day. I was wondering what was the traffic count? And when was that most recent traffic study performed?
What they do is they do a raw count, actually physically counting cars. And then every 3 to 5 years in between, they kind of project it based on their criteria and formula. The last one was done in 2020. I believe it was just over 6,000 cars.
A day, okay.
In 2000, it was like 8,000, and
Okay.
it slowly worked down about.
And that might have been due to loading restrictions, I don't know, or the other bridge took some of the traffic away.
Yeah, most likely.
Right, okay. This would be your opinion, and I'd probably ask Senator Udicek if you could weigh in on this. Some people have suggested to me in emails that the replacement of this bridge is unnecessary since we have the Cross Valley South Bridge nearby. Can you speak to that? Do you believe that's true, or do you think it's still necessary to replace as the county engineer?
Me personally, I don't live in the area, but I've heard a lot from a lot of residents and from a lot of people who use the bridge that it's needed.
Okay,
Just like you would say Water Street's not needed. We got a bridge right there. but
Right.
We found out it's needed.
okay. Senator, do you want to comment on that? And Mr. Flesh, do you mind hanging around there for a second? I have one more. Okay.
So- Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, is based on what the feedback I received over the weekend. Some people suggest that the replacement of the Nanticoke Bridge is unnecessary since we have the construction of the Cross Valley South Bridge nearby. Can you speak to that issue?
I think the county engineer adequately and appropriately addressed that question. I have the pleasure and honor of representing both Greater Pittston and Greater Nanticoke area in the footprint of the Water Street Bridge and the West Nanticoke Bridge. Clearly, you, Mr. Thornton, as a former member of council in West Pittston, where we battled the 2011 flood together, you recognize there's an importance to both bridges. When the Water Street Bridge failed and was closed, we raised legitimate questions as community leaders. Do we need two bridges or do we need one bridge? Can we just focus on the state bridge, completely taking off the financial burden of the county and demolish the Water Street Bridge? Clearly, the community and the engineers determined that we needed two bridges. My view, having been born and raised in Plymouth Township, grew up in West Nanticoke, born and raised in the Greater Nanticoke area, I know that bridge as well as anybody. And I take 4 beautiful daughters over that bridge just about every day. The quality of that bridge is very important to me and the public safety of my children and every child in Luzerne County. There is without question, you need two bridges. I have a bit of family history on the South Cross Valley. My father came back from the Korean War and he ran into a beautiful young lady who worked at a diner in West Nanticoke, the Flamingo Diner, who helped him get a job. $2.25 an hour as a day labor building that lower South Cross Valley. That waitress turned out to be my mother, and thank goodness. And so that infrastructure investment in that region. So when I hear that we don't need a West Nanticoke Bridge, that's telling the folks of Nanticoke, of Plymouth Township, of Newport Township, of Plymouth, of Hanover Township, that entire South Valley, all the way to Shikshini and Mackinac, that they don't matter. They certainly matter to me. Their safety matters to me. And I think you're correct. These are separate issues, economic development and public safety. Hearing from the engineers that we are potentially one inspection away from a public safety hazard or the same fate as those good people in West Pittston and Greater Pittston of having a key infrastructure asset being closed to them. You know the pain of it, the economic pain, and also I've heard from public safety advocates. Right now, Nanticoke provides EMS, fire, and police service to Plymouth Township. Under the current weight restriction, they can't get a fire truck over the West Nanticoke Bridge. Telling them that they have to go over the South Valley and that be good enough, the response time changes. People's lives are in danger. Public infrastructure is about public safety. I would encourage an affirmative vote on as you move forward, as you have on the MOU and on the LSA.
Okay, and one last question. And you probably sort of answered this already, but because I have received numerous emails from people saying to me, and I think you know my opinion on it, that they're saying the reason we're looking to build that Nanticoke Bridge right now is only because we're trying to bring the Nacero Corporation here for their project with energy. My question to you is, just so for everybody's edification here, if the Nacero project never comes to fruition, is the replacement of the Nanticoke Bridge still necessary?
Essential to public safety. Talk to the fire chief in Nanticoke who can't get that apparatus across that bridge. Talk to the folks in Plymouth Township and West Nanticoke who are concerned about public safety. Their 2 fire departments are closed. They do not have police services. They do not have ambulance services. They depend on Nanticoke area to provide those services. Without that bridge, lives are in jeopardy. If that bridge continues to deteriorate, it was built in 1919, updated in the mid-'80s. As I think Larry, much better than I can tell you, it is beyond its structural use and life. It is very important that we work together, state, federal, county, local governments working together to address these public safety issues.
Regardless if Nacero ever happens.
Of any economic development. We've been blessed, thanks to this council. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The growth that we've had in the South Valley because of an infrastructure project, the South Valley Parkway, which took over 20 years to complete. As a result of our perseverance, there is 8,000 jobs that didn't exist in the communities of Hanover Township, Nanticoke, Newport Township, and Plymouth Township. That is an extraordinary return on the investment made by county taxpayers, state taxpayers, and it's also an extraordinary safety enhancement. community college students were driving down through Upper and Lower Askham where literally porches were on Middle Road. People's lives were in danger. This is about public safety. There is economic development above and beyond Nacero, above and beyond North Point, above and beyond one of the great assets that we have here in Luzerne County, Luzerne County Community College, serving almost 5,000 students. You're going to impact their lives and their safeties by taking away a bridge. So it's above and beyond economic development. It comes down to public safety, and it comes down to whether those folks in the South Valley, Greater Nanticoke area, Newport Township, Plymouth Township, Hanover Township, do those folks matter? Do they deserve the same level of respect and public safety that we want to extend to everybody in this county? That's what these projects are about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator. Mr. Irvin?
Senator Udechek, regarding the funding mechanism and you being instrumental, in the state senate for many years, why wasn't it ever considered that maybe we convey that bridge over to PennDOT and allow them to take over the funding and the revitalization of the bridge? With the cost savings of maybe the 30% that we're going to be paying the banks in interest. I mean, it really economically, every dollar counts in this county. And to really take 75 million, peel off over 20 million in interest to a bank. That 20 million could be used to revitalize other areas and other municipalities, other structures, other roads, other bridges. There could have been a different funding mechanism besides this one, and I really want to know the genesis of how this came to light and was thrown on our plate without any conferring of council in the past. Because, I just don't like things magically appearing on the agenda. The dialogue needs to happen before it gets to this point where it gets cantankerous between us and other officials.
I feel no hostility. I'm happy to answer your question. On your question regarding interest being paid on a bond issue or loan, you can turn to your right. The gentleman has a financial license. He can tell you any bond or loan is going to involve interest payments. That's part of the financial system. That's not going to change. That has nothing to do with state law or with me. That's strictly our financial system in the United States of America. To the point of the conversation, this has not been thrust upon the council. I've come before council, made a presentation at the request of council members. This has been discussed for a better part of a decade by this council, current members and others who have been frustrated, and rightfully so, frustrated that Luzerne County, the host county of Mohegan Sun Casino, that generates roughly about $10 to $12 million each and every year in local gaming money that gets distributed to municipalities, with the exception of the county. I think Mr. McGinley could correct me if I'm wrong, perhaps one LSA over all that time, 15 years, for the Rotunda. There have been members of this council and past administrators that have come to legislators and said, it's not fair that we don't even have access to these fundings. Because if you remember, the original LSA law only allowed the conduit of a municipality to apply for an LSA loan. So if Luzerne County wanted to be an applicant, they had to go municipality to municipality and ask them to approve their application. Working with this county council over the last 12 years, I've been a state senator, we decided to change the law. And the first change that we made to the law was allowing the Luzerne County Redevelopment Authority to be a portal, and a portal for LSA applications. That gave the county a conduit to apply for LSA. Still, it was limiting. Still, additional LSA money didn't come to Luzerne County. So working collaboratively with members of council, administrators, president past, we developed the program called the Luzerne County Infrastructure Program that would generate up to $55 million in LSA dollars that would be at the discretion of this council, not the RDA, not the CFA, not a state senator, at the discretion of this council. The vote that you have tonight is not about a specific project, as Attorney Kaslansky appropriately pointed out. This is about moving the legal process forward on the Local Debt Act. And then once your application is approved, if it is approved at the RDA and the CFA level under this memorandum of understanding, this council has the historic opportunity to address infrastructure projects that have been deferred for decades, 5, 6, 7 decades. You have that power. All you're doing tonight, if you're in the affirmative, is voting to give this council the power to spend $55 million in LSA funding, not burdening the taxpayers of Luzerne County, and thoroughly having the ability to vet these projects, to advance these projects at the discretion of this council. So to address your question, there has been no sleight of hand. This has been discussed. It's been certainly vetted at the legislative level. The entire Luzerne County delegation, Democrat, Republican, and this independent voted in favor of this Luzerne County infrastructure program. So it was vetted at the state level in the light of day. It's been vetted in this room in the light of day. You have all the information before you, and you have all the power in your hands with an affirmative vote to put these resources to good use on behalf of the taxpayers of Luzerne County.
I'd like to know which council members were spoken to in the past, because this is my 6th year on this council, and you've only been here once that I can recall, and that was a few weeks ago. So I was never, nobody ever discussed anything.
I've been here all 12 years that I've been honored to be the state senator for Luzerne County. I've been a part of many projects. In fact, I see your tremendous representative from your tourism bureau. We just secured $250,000 for the tourism bureau. We have had these discussions over the years with previous county managers, with previous county council members, and with folks that are in this room today. Listen, as I understand, if you want to debate the charter, as I understand it, the county manager is the one that advances these projects and informs county council. I have always, as every gentleman in this room understands, you text me, you call me, you want to have a meeting, you get a meeting. Doesn't matter where. I'm happy to have a meeting with you and anyone else on this council to discuss issues imperative to this county. You referenced, why did the state take on the bridge? I don't recall a resolution ever coming out of this body in your time saying, state, why don't you take over this bridge? State, just like the county, is an unenviable position of a lot of municipalities not wanting to take their roads back. Quite frankly, we have an opportunity for Hanover Township, who's interested in taking one of the county roads back in this project scope, which is a huge win for the county. Not only do you get an asset repaired, you get an asset off your books. Unfortunately, that's a very difficult process, Mr. Irvin. The state hasn't stepped up in many respects in terms of taking over county roads. Now, I certainly don't have the long history of Luzerne County in terms of how Luzerne County acquired 101 miles of roadway. I can't speak to that. But to your questions, my office certainly has always been open to anybody that requested consultation or collaboration. We've been open, upfront, and honest about how this program is designed. We've gotten input. We've gotten to the point, as Mr. Thornton had mentioned earlier, they demanded a memorandum of understanding. That was put in place and voted on today. You wanted input and empowerment to decide what projects the county resources, if the county backs this with a loan guarantee, that's been put in place. So any other questions from any other members? I'm happy to answer. Yes, sir.
So this is my final question again. We do not have to move forward with Nanticoke Bridge.
As Attorney Castellansky pointed out, this is a legal proceeding. You have to go through the Local Government Debt Act. As a result of that, you have to put a project in place that it can encompass the entire loan amount. So that's why Water Street Bridge couldn't be used. It wouldn't qualify. It wouldn't trigger the mechanisms that we have to go through, the ordinances that have to be passed to ensure that we go through the Local Debt Act, we close on the loan document. So there is unequivocal. You do not have to select a specific project, whether that is a road in the back mountain in Greater Pittston, in Greater Hazleton, or the West Nanticoke Bridge. Going forward, this council will be empowered to make those decisions on what are the top priorities. The top priorities that I have heard for the better part of a decade has been the one infrastructure asset that we have in Luzerne County is the West Nanticoke Bridge, that we don't have a game plan or the resources. And as I've heard and listened, this county and this county council, past and present, has done a phenomenal job in bringing down its debt. Phenomenal. That's why we didn't want to add additional debt when it came to projects like the West Nanticoke Bridge or potentially a new prison. We have designed a program that will not add to the debt burden of the county taxpayers and can tackle large projects like the West Nanticoke Bridge or any others that this body determines. You're not being forced to vote on a specific project. You are being asked to vote on a loan guarantee through an MOU and then an LSA application that gives you the power to set the course for county taxpayers.
Thank you, Senator. We have a motion by
I'd
Mr. Lombardo.
I'd like to make a final statement because I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage here
I'd
tonight.
like to speak after this one.
And I just want to remind everybody in the public that this Nanticoke Bridge replacement is an absolute necessity. It's not a question whether or not we want to or not. Right now, we have an opportunity to pay for the construction of that bridge using gamblers' money. There's many gamblers in the state of Pennsylvania, you can say unfortunately, and it's one of the oldest vices in the history of the world. I don't think it's going away. So when you weigh the risk versus reward, the risk of all gambling shutting down in the state is virtually nil, in my opinion. So if we have an opportunity to build a brand new bridge using the gamblers' money, which is funneled through the LSA to the redevelopment authority, rather than the local taxpayer money, I think it's a great idea. Unfortunately, for reasons stated earlier, I'm going to have to abstain on this motion also. But go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. McGinley?
Two things.
Sure.
Number one, and I had concerns about looking at this bridge because of Sarah potentially, there's no guarantees, then coming into our county and building it up. Sounds like a great facility with a lot of opportunity for people, good jobs, etc. The longer I look at it, and the more I talk about it, it's really two different issues. Sarah is an economic issue, as the senator talked about. That could come or couldn't come. We don't know at this point. The bridge is on its own. It's 100 and some years old. What's the expected lifetime? I'm sure we're past that at this point. So obviously, that's the way I look at it. It's the bridge, nothing else. The second part is, we look at this and we say we have a bridge and we have another bridge 3/4 of a mile away or half a mile away. Pittston, West Pittston, we see 350 yards between them. Mm-hmm. And you can see how the congestion and things back up. The senator indicated that discussions about the safety involved because of the police and fire protection. That's an issue. It's a very important issue. Whoever lives in those communities, I'm sure it's a very big issue. So that's something we have to consider strongly. We could do a lot of things, and I'll be honest with you, I did a lot of research, a lot of talking over the last probably 3 days, a lot of different officials, a lot of different places. And I talked to the federal government, Senator Congressman Harvey's office. They can't guarantee how much money we could get from the infrastructure bill. It's going to go through the state, and the state's going to have a formula or whatever, and we don't know how long that's going to take. So that's sort of pushed off to the side. I'm sure there's other projects, if we do get money, we would love to fund. But we have to vote on this project the way it is right now. So I think it's time now for the council to make a decision, up or down, so they know what to do, and we're moving forward, sideways, whatever. It's time to make a decision.
Thank you, Mr. McGinley. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lombardo, a second by Mr. Mitchell. Can we have a roll call on the motion to adopt the resolution requesting the local share account grant from the Luzerne County Redevelopment Authority and the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Financing Authority?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Thornton,
Abstain.
Mr. Urban.
No.
Mr. Willoughby,
Yes.
Mr. Venus,
Yes.
Mr. LaScavitch,
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo. Lombardo,
me that he got disconnected a little bit ago, and I don't know if he got back on.
A long discussion. He might have to call this.
Probably
Just
more
move
than
on.
just do this.
Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo? Ms.
Yes.
Radel?
Yes.
And Mr. Lombardo?
Oh, he's on.
Was he on duty? Might have had a call.
No, he said I just got disconnected from the meeting. I'm trying to reconnect, but that was 15 minutes ago.
Want me to call him? Come on speaker.
We do that.
We do that?
We do that. Um,
Who verified the rules?
Well, it's in my phone, it's John Lombardo.
What if he calls his son?
Yeah, so you could talk.
Thanks.
Glen got disconnected too, I guess.
Yeah, we don't have him. Okay. What's the vote?
Hi, this is John Lombardo.
There's our proof.
1 no.
8 yes, 1 no, 1 abstention, so the motion passes. Number 5, motion to adopt resolution declaring a vacancy on the Luzerne County Community College Board of Trustees.
So
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Thornton, a second by Mr. McGinley. Roll call.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Venus?
Yes.
Mr. LaScavitch?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo? Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes.
10 yes.
Number 6, motion to allow Sally Noel Tony to advertise county-owned property.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Urban, second by Mr. Lovett. Roll call.
Mr. Thornton?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Venus?
Yes.
Mr. LaScavitch?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardo? Ms. McDermott?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Ms. Radel?
Yes. 10 yes, motion passes. Number 7, motion to adopt resolution approving real estate broker services related to the sale of 1200 Susquehanna Avenue, West Pittston. Here's how we're gonna do this. We're gonna open it for nominations. You can make your nomination. We'll close nominations. We'll vote on our nominee and then we'll close the resolution. So
Motion to open nomination.
Second that motion.
all in favor of opening nominations?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, nominations are open.
I nominate, I'd like to nominate Classic.
We have a motion for classic,
Second.
a motion second for classic properties. Any other nominations?
Nominate Chris.
We have a second?
Second.
Were we allowed to comment on it before we vote?
Yeah, but we'll close nominations. If you
Okay.
guys are you guys ready to close nominations?
Motion closed.
Second. Well.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions, opposed? Nominations are closed. We have 2 nominees. We have Classic Properties and Cooks. You had a comment?
Yeah, just 2 comments, if I could. One is, when I analyzed these 2 proposals, I'm just looking at the scale of the companies. That's why I'm suggesting Classic Properties tonight. Not saying anything negative against Cook's Real Estate at all. Sure, they're very capable of running their real estate business. But when I researched them online, it said there was 2 agents working for that firm versus 120 Classic Property agents in the Northeast region of Pennsylvania here. I looked at the PPP application they submitted a couple of years ago in 2020. And it said the average salary of their employees they deduced from the application was $13,440 average salary. The amount of experience, I looked online, and Cook's real estate firm was founded less than 5 years ago, October of 17. Classic Properties has been in operation for almost 40 years, 39 years since 1983. And my research where I was looking on reviews.birdseye.com, I found only one review. It was a good review for Cooks. I found hundreds of reviews for Classic Properties. So my reason, because I'm representing the county residents here, I want to make sure, I think scale matters. I think that kind of experience kind of takes the worry away from council and its residents about liability and making sure everything falls in compliance with the law, with the sale of the property. And that's why I proposed Classic Properties. The second thing I wanted to comment on, Madam Chair, was I think almost everybody here, or everybody in the room probably knows that the one agent for Classic Properties that was interested in this proposal that submitted it is a acquaintance, not more than an acquaintance, is actually a girlfriend of Councilman Miscavige. And I think that concerns a lot of people. To that end, I just want to say one thing, that there's 11 council members sitting here. We all have nephews, nieces, cousins, brothers, sisters, brother-in-laws, aunts, uncles, sister-in-laws. And if we were to prohibit any of our relatives, girlfriends, anybody from bidding on any county work in the future, as valid as it may be, obtained by the county through valid bidding procedures, we would probably eliminate almost half the county. And I don't think that benefits the county residents. So that's what I wanted to comment. And the other thing I'll say is, I know she's a girlfriend of his, but you know, Kevin's not the easiest guy to get along with. They may break up next week, who knows? So, you know, that's all.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment to that also. With doing research and looking through the packets that were submitted, Classic Properties does say how many different places that they're going to try to advertise. Of course, the Flex MLS multiple listing service, but also Facebook, a lot of Zillow, Trulia, AdWorks, which is digital targeting, advertising. They certainly do seem that they're going to reach a lot more customers, I know, or potential buyers. I know we have people that are already interested in it, but if we reach more people, it's possible that we can get a higher price, especially someone from outside of the area. Also, Classic Properties has closed, it says 126 more deals, more than their closest competitors. And that was in 2021. So again, 126 more deals for the whole year compared to their closest competitor. They do seem like they're the better for the 4%, because we're dealing with right now with 2 real estate services that are offering 4%, just to let the public know. I don't know if they knew that. The 2 other companies that submitted their RFPs were at 6%. So of course, to save the tax dollars, you know, for the taxpayers, we'll go with a 4% company. That's what we're dealing with right now. Just dealing with, again, the facts, both 4%. Classic Property does seem to have a lot more marketing and advertising access that they're going to be using with the property.
We should also add though that clicks, just to be transparent, if you're saying they're both 4%, clicks would reduce the commission to 3% if there were no other broker involved.
Yes.
Just to be clear, I'm used to say again, abstain from a vote or any comments, except the responsive. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So
I just like to make comments. Number one, there's a lot of people talking about the different level of experience, et cetera. The lady, Ms. Cooks, who is currently the owner, I guess, of this real estate firm, worked in real estate for a long time. She's been there probably 25, 50 years. So she has great experience also. You mentioned the fact that the fee would be reduced to 3%. Potentially, you're talking about $5,000 to $10,000 difference. And as a long-serving member of the council, we have tried very hard to get away from any negative perspective about contracts and awards, et cetera. That's something that I think we have to talk about and really work on. I can remember one specific situation where a gentleman that we had appointed to one of the boards had to resign. And then he was very upset by that. because of the fact the charter was very specific. You have a contract with the county, you can't serve on one of those boards and commissions. Those are things that, you know, we have to talk about, those are things that we have to consider. I'm sure Classic Properties, in fact, I bought 2 properties, Classic Properties. They're good people. They're good people. I'm sure the Cooks people will be good people. They also will put a lot of time and effort into marketing and getting this property out there because they're on the hot spot. Now, this is their first big encounter maybe. So they're going to do all the work they can to make sure they look great. So that's my comments. I'm not deriding anybody because I think there's a lot of good people here who submitted information. And I appreciate the fact that it did get 4 groups that submitted information. That's very good to get some numbers like that. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGinley. Okay, so we have 2 nominees, Classic Properties and Clicks. If we could do a roll call vote and please state your nominee.
Mr. Urban,
Classic.
Mr. Lovett,
Classic.
Mr. Venus,
Classic.
Mr. LaScavitch,
Abstain.
Mr. Lombardo, Mr. Dermott,
Classic.
Mr. McGinley,
Good.
Mr. Mitchell,
Classic.
Mr. Perry,
Good.
Mr. Thornton,
Classic.
Ms. Radel.
Cooks.
3 for Cooks. And 6 for Classic.
That's not right.
Yeah. Thornton, Urban, Lovett,
Oh, 1 abstention. And I'm missing 1. Abstention.
1 abstention, 1 absent.
So
So I
that's
have
11.
Venus, yes, McDermott, yes, Mitchell, yes, Thornton, yes, Urban, yes, Lovett, yes. McGinley, no, Perry, no, Radel, no, 1 abstention, 1 missing.
Okay, so 6-2.
6-3-1.
Classic Properties. So Classic Properties got the nominee. They have a majority. So we will do the motion to adopt the resolution approving the real estate broker as Classic Properties.
So moved.
Second. Thornton.
Roll call.
Mr. Lovett,
Yes.
Mr. Venus.
Yes.
Mr. LaScavitch,
Abstain.
Mr. Lombardo, Ms. McDermott,
Yes.
Mr. McGinley,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Thornton,
Yes.
Mr. Urban.
Yes.
Ms. Radel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Classic Properties got it. So now we have public comment on non-agenda items. Before we go into public comment, I have 1 announcement. The Office of Law has arranged for attorney Terry Muchler from the Obermeyer Law Firm to present a program on the Right to Know Act and the Sunshine Act. The program is being presented at Burke's Auditorium at McGowan Hall, that's at King's College, on Tuesday, July 19th at 6 p.m. Parking will be available in lots A and B. It's open to the public. It'll also be available via Zoom, and that information will be on the county website.
What date was that? Excuse me.
July 19th at 6 p.m.
And that is Sunday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
July. What's today?
It's a week today, Tim.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, 1 week.
Thank you.
Sure. Also, really quickly, we will have an update from the county manager and Mr. Stout later, but if anybody leaves, just in case they leave before the work session, Rock in the River is this Friday, July 15th. I believe it starts at 6 p.m. But I think the food truck's open before then, so if anybody wants to hop over there, it's a great free event that the county is hosting at the Millennium Park. Okay, moving on to public comment, Mr. Chomp.
Thank you, Council. Dave Chomp, West Pittston. This might run over a couple seconds. I'll try to be as fast as possible. In response to Luzerne County Election Board Chairwoman Denise Williams' letter to Council a couple weeks ago, I'd like to offer another viewpoint on universal mail-in voting and drop boxes. Despite the best efforts of the social media oligarchs, Democratic Party surrogates in the mainstream media,
and liberal politicians to convince us that the 2020 election was one of the most honest elections in recent memory. Anyone who bothered to seek out and research the facts would easily find out this is far from reality. Pennsylvania alone had 300 witnesses with sworn testimony ready to attest to irregularities and legal issues. A total of 191,725 mail-in ballots were touched by alterations, illegality, or anomalies, according to data.pa.gov. Established election laws were changed, ignored, or newly created without proper legislative procedure, including unilateral mandates by Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar and our Supreme Court usurping the legislative branch. Research has shown that 37 states altered their absentee mail-in ballot integrity procedures for the 2020 presidential election, reducing the rate of illegal ballots caught by election officials. Based on using the same ballot integrity procedures as 2018, it has been carefully estimated that swing states would have found upwards of 30 times more illegal ballots using those same procedures. So why hasn't any of this been brought to a Pennsylvania court, you may ask? Well, remember when our Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, proudly proclaimed that Donald Trump would never win in Pennsylvania? Or the highly politicized Supreme Court, Secretary of State, and governor making key decisions regarding the election outcome? There's your answer. Not one of the 300 witnesses with sworn testimony was granted an evidentiary hearing on their claims. The Supreme Court made key rulings to shut down any chance of legal hearings to address any claims to the contrary. Josh Shapiro launching an investigation? Think again. In short, the Pennsylvania power structure had no interest in investigating any of this, nor were the courts really properly equipped to address such far-reaching irregularities as were seen in 2020. Just because the courts refused to grant hearings does not mean the evidence was not real or fraud did not happen. I would love for Ms. Williams to tell us how anyone can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person who signs a mail-in ballot is the same person who filled it out.
Thank you, Mr. Chong.
I have a couple more seconds. Or please tell us how we can be 100% certain that people are not dropping multiple ballots in drop boxes, thereby breaking the law and leaving the election process vulnerable to ballot
Thank you,
harvesting.
Mr. Chong. Your time is up.
Or who in the Elections Bureau is a certified signature
Mr. Chong, if you
analyst
don't respect the rules, I'll have to ask you to leave.
that can match signatures. I have a couple paragraphs to go.
Mr. Chong, the rules are 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Please have a seat. Ms. Morgan?
That was a great segue into what I came to talk about tonight. I have some great news. You're going to enjoy this.
Speak up a little bit.
Sure.
You gotta yell.
That's just roll.
That's for sure.
For sure? Oh, okay. As of yesterday, our governor, Tom Wolf, actually signed into law Senate Bill 982, which was written by our own Senator, Lisa Baker. 982 amends the election code to establish an election integrity grant program and to require all county boards of elections to complete a review of certain election administrative practices. The prohibition on public funding and the penalty for violation shall take effect in 60 days. No more third-party money in Pennsylvania elections. The remainder of the legislation would take effect immediately. So we cannot accept any private donation or contribution for administration of elections, and an integrity grant program is going to be set up. I have copies of the faceplate of this, and I've made the entire bill, I copied it for our new county manager, and for the chairperson. Any person who violates section 107, which is what I've just discussed, shall be guilty of a misdemeanor of the second degree and shall, upon conviction thereof, be sentenced to pay a fine not exceeding $5,000 or to undergo an imprisonment of not more than 2 years or both. And that's at the discretion of the court. The legislation provides the county boards of elections, and that's why I think this is so important that you guys understand what your Bureau of Election needs to do. They shall prepare and submit not later than 5 days prior to each election a report to the secretary containing a statement of the total number of electors registered in each election district, together with the breakdown of registrations by each political party. Copies of the said statement shall be furnished to the county chairman of each political party, and they'll publicly report the total number of registered electors for each political party or designation in each county prior to election day.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan.
Sure. I wonder if I can send these out to you.
You can email them or pass them out, whichever. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Robertson and.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And welcome, Mr. Robertson.
Thank you, ma'am.
I hope you're going to become one of my heroes. At least
Thanks, Ms. Morgan.
Mr. Robertson, members of council, and fine citizens and everyone at home. Greg Griffin, Swarsville. I'm a member of the Mothers Opioid Committee, and we know council gets this. We know council understands the problem. We've had veteran council members here. Many council members have heard me speak. That we have new council members, so it's repetitive, but it's very important, especially since we reached a record last year of 208 young people dying from poly drugs, opioids, fentanyl drugs. So it's a complete disaster. And Mr. Robertson, you've taken a job in a county where it's 3rd out of 67 counties for young people dying. So that's what you've adopted. And, you know, we have faith that you're going to do everything you can to lower the number next year and not have another record year. Council business cannot be just about bridges, roads, elevators, bank loans. It's all very important, those subjects. Possibly 1,000 young people from Luzerne County have died over 5 years. That's a natural resource we cannot allow to continue. So there's very good news coming, but a county cannot remain viable, healthy, or a good place to raise children being 3rd out of 67. But the good news is our fantastic district attorney is working on a proposal to visit the schools. There's so many schools in Luzerne County, it's overwhelming, but a perpetual visit by experts with the district attorney, the sheriff's department, and experts visiting the kids. And they're saying 4th through 8th grade are prime years. Of course, the seniors. But this fentanyl, a grain of salt equivalent in the salt shaker. You can't see it. A grain of salt. That's how much fentanyl will kill you and stop your lungs. So the kids are making silly mistakes like we did with alcohol. And we have to do something to educate them and save as many as we can. So the district attorney is going to be approaching council. He's a fantastic gentleman. He cares. Council, you know, the mothers are watching. We just have 208 more mothers and fathers. They could be here. I tell them it's not necessary. We have had parents come here, but council gets it. So, but the district attorney will be speaking with you. But thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, I see Mr. Raybo has his hand up.
Madam Chair, this is Mr. Mark Rabo speaking. I would like to comment on what transpired with the LSA infrastructure. I agree that the bridge is a safety issue. Nobody's disputing the bridge, the West Nanticoke Bridge isn't a safety issue. The contention is this the best deal for Luzerne County taxpayers? And will this negatively impact the debt that this council and especially previous councils worked so hard, along with the taxpayers who footed the bill to pay down the debt of this county? And the answer is a resounding no. This is not the best deal. And my question is, why the insistence of Fidelity Bank? Why was this rushed so fervently by Senator Udicek? And the answer goes back to my original public comment, which is political expediency. To say that there was no political expediency involved is so egregiously disingenuous, it's not even funny. We all know in the county, the people that go to the meetings since the inception of home rule, that there is a political class that donates to the council members over the years. And some of those political elites happen to come from a PAC that's called Pennsylvania Northeast Leadership Fund. And Pennsylvania Northeast Leadership Fund donates to state senators in our area and county elected officials. And guess who happens to where those the principles of the Northeast Leadership Fund happen to be, where their interests lie. One of their interests is in Fidelity Bank. So it seems to me, Madam Chair, it gives the perception that this was rushed based on political expediency for a quid pro quo. Okay, so I mean, I'm at a loss here as far as the public needs to know this stuff, because this is going to be on the heads of the Luzerne County taxpayers for years to come. Also, Madam Chair, I'd like to ask a question of you to ask the Office of Law. It was just released in the paper that Wilkes-Barre City Councilwoman is now going to be hired as the Deputy Election Director. Tell me how that's not an ethical conflict. I think you guys need to render a legal opinion on that, the Office of Law does, or get an advisory opinion from the state ethics before that can happen. Because I've never seen an elected official serve as a director or deputy director of an election bureau. I mean, but
Thank you, Mr. Rabel.
to conclude, Madam Chair, one last sentence. The
Mr.
election
Rabel,
director.
I cut everybody else off at 3 minutes. I'm sorry, it's 3 minutes. I apologize. Any other members of the public that are here that wish to speak? If
Madam
not, we
Chair.
have Controller
Madam
Griffin
Chair.
at the table. Go ahead,
Yep.
go ahead, I hear you.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. For the folks who voted for number 3 and 4, in the hopes that the gaming funds will never dry up, take a look at Atlantic City. That's a telltale sign of what happens to gaming at any given moment. It's not a guaranteed flow of income. Atlantic City is almost desolate down there, and they thought they were sitting high on the hill with gaming money at one time. The other question I have is the real estate committee, have they met to discuss that item 7 that was on the agenda, as well as the Castillo property that's coming up on the work session? Has the real estate committee met, which I haven't seen nothing on their agenda? So my follow-up question is, why is the council bylaws not being followed by these committees? We have several committees of this council that have not met once in a quarter. The council bylaws are clear. It says all county council committees will meet at least once a quarter. I don't understand why this council, the chair or the council itself, is not enforcing their own rules, but you will enforce the 3-minute time frame on anybody who speaks at these meetings. I think it's disingenuous at best. We need to start following the rules of the county council bylaws. When Mr. McGinley was the chair, he was the stickler for that, and I applaud him for that. We are not getting that anymore, and I'm curious as to know why. We never heard anything about the West Nanticoke Bridge when I was on council from Mr. Udicek. Before 2 weeks ago was the first time I ever saw the man at a council meeting. And so I certainly understand the West Nanticoke Bridge's importance. However, it just seems to me, as Mr. Rabo just stated, it seems like it was all of a sudden we have to get this West Nanticoke Bridge on the agenda. And if it really doesn't matter and it's just It doesn't matter what we spend the 55 million on. I suggested the county get an estimate on fixing every county road and every county bridge before we touch the Nanticoke Bridge first, because we have a lot of them that need repair that we could use that money for and submit a bid to the Commonwealth Financial Authority for at least $50 million just to fix county roads that are in dire need of infrastructure repair. And we wouldn't even have to worry about, and put $20 million towards the Nanticoke Bridge for repair. That would be a prudent way to spend 55 million, not spend 45 million on one item and then not have any other extra money to spend. I just find that this council just passed an issue in measure 3 and 4 that they were forced to pass. I appreciate the fact that we all look at public safety. Plymouth Township doesn't have a fire department because Plymouth Township doesn't want to fund one. That's the only reason they don't have one. It's not because they don't have one. They have one. It's a volunteer setup. They don't want to pay for their debt, so they don't have one. So Plymouth Township has their own financial issues, just like Luzerne County. And for us to have a bridge just so we could get across that bridge with fire apparatus to make sure they're protected is important, but they have their own issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
If not, I'd like to respond.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Griffith, in reference to the real estate committee, the juvenile detention center has already been discussed with council, and now this is bringing up another issue with it. Rather than delay anything with that, we decided to just put it to council. And also with the broker, with the Story House, we talked about it before with council. It's not like it was the first time that it was brought up. Also, we don't want to miss the summer months of trying to sell that property. And we've been just sitting here waiting for work sessions, voting sessions to be able to get to the next step of trying to sell it. So here we are. Let's list it. Let's get it sold. Let's not waste any more time putting it through the committee since it was already discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Griffith, in regards to committee's meeting, we had a committee update at the last work session, and every chair of every committee said that there was one in the works if they had not already met. So council members, please be mindful of that. But everybody updated that they were trying to get something scheduled, so I appreciate that. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions, opposed, adjourned. Okay, it is currently 7:50. Let's go 7:55 for the work session.
Recording stopped.
I hear it everywhere I go. Very down there, very personable. I really do. So, you know, it's good. It's good. I think I'll be ready to work for them. You know, there's 319,000 release.
And that's what I said. And I thought it was
Guys, turn your mics off.
I've been holding them for about an hour.
Contact you, we can wait a minute.
I'm cold today and I'm never cold. It's okay. I don't think that's a bad thing. I said I'm cold and I am never cold.
This must be like our open windows for the work session.
Yeah, let the light in. My entire first 2 years on council, I didn't even do my open.
Yeah.
No. I remember the first time I was in this. I saw it.
Yeah, I believe they did.
Yeah, but there was only 3 of them sitting up here.
They're effective.
Yeah. You figure people at a table are causing
lens flare.
I am happy.
Okay.
I am happy.
It might not be so bad right now.
Yeah, if it gets worse, let me know.
What if they wear sunglasses?
Is it nice to have air?
It is. It's great to have air conditioning.
Oh, yeah, really.
Yeah. Leanne calls me this morning. I'm like, Leanne, I don't even want to tell you what I'm wearing.
It's like that.
That was a legitimate question. All right, if he's there, I'll try to pull out. No, I know, but it's up to you. I've been doing it already on some websites.
Nobody wants to see that.
And his cable got knocked out.
And especially every power too.
There are some people.
Everything.
I wanna go to Friday. We have the door, you know, it's.
You wanna come over and watch TV, it's $10 a half
When are you
hour.
supposed to get it?
I don't have, they came and they fixed the game. So they said all that. Okay, so I'm hoping that it will be fixed by Friday.
Okay. It's early enough.
Okay, it's 8 p.m. Let's get the work session
Recording in
started.
progress.
We already did a pledge of allegiance in a moment of silence. We have a roll call, Ms. Lawrence.
Mr. Venus.
President.
Mr. LaScavitch.
Here.
Mr. Lombardo.
Here.
Ms. McDermott.
Here.
Mr. McGinley.
Present.
Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Perry.
Here.
Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Mr. Urban.
Here.
Mr. Lovett.
Here.
Ms. Radel.
Here.
All present.
For additions, if you guys don't mind, we're gonna add under agenda items county manager, above item number 1, we're gonna start adding a like a county manager minute. It'll just be updates from Mr. Robertson. If he has updates, he'll give them. If he doesn't, he'll pass them off, but we're gonna add that starting today, if everyone's okay with that.
Sure.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda with that on there?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention? The agenda is adopted. So number 1, we have a county manager update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, councilors. We had discussed this earlier in the last week, I guess it was, and it just seems prudent that at least I have a placeholder. Sometimes I might not have anything to discuss, but also, since there's 11 of you and 1 of me, if you have a question of me, like what's happened in the last couple of weeks, it's more expeditious because what I'm trying to do is what I say to 1, I try to say to 11 people. I think that's the rules.
I have asked for the first one though, because we have a lot of big events and Mr. Stout says he's only been to one council meeting and that was a budget, so that was dull. So I said, come on down. So I'm going to defer my time tonight to Alan to give you a little bit about where he's been, where he's gone, and some really exciting things in the couple of meetings we've had. So Mr. Stout, would you share with them some of the things you told me?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. When I was a young boy, my grandmother used to work in the cafeteria here in the court. I'd come to the back steps and run in, no security back then, no wands, little boy, 7 years old. I'd run into the cafeteria and tell my grandmother that her ride was here. And then we'd go back down to Hanover Township. And when Mr. Robinson's right, my work at the Visitors Bureau doesn't bring me here very often into the courthouse. But when I do come here, I still look at it with the sense of wonder as I did back then. It really is a magnificent place, and it's a privilege to come here tonight and talk to some of our elected leaders about what we're doing over at the Visitors Bureau. So thank you for having me here tonight. The Visitors Bureau this year is actually noted its 25th anniversary. It opened in 1997. That coincided pretty much with the time that plans were formalized to build the arena. It was all around the time that the hotel tax was adopted. And that is basically what funds everything that we do. There is a 5% hotel tax in Luzerne County. The Visitors Bureau gets 1% of that 5%. The Convention Authority gets the rest. And so everything that we do at the Visitors Bureau is really not funded at all by the people of Luzerne County, unless you're staying at a hotel overnight here, which most of us don't do because we live here. And so I think I've always liked to remind people of that briefly. I don't talk about it that much, but if you see the promotions that we do, the events that we support, the things that we do for our community, the events that we put on ourselves, the office that we run, it's all paid for really by people not even from here. And so that's a bonus, I think, for the people of Luzerne County. What we do with that revenue is we invest it back into this community. Not only do we run our office out of the train station, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and I have some pictures to show you, but we will support events like the Keystone State Games, like the Fine Arts Fiesta, or the Tomato Festival, or the Fun Fest in Hazleton, all over the county to improve the quality of life for our residents and to make this a more fun and interesting place to live. Because the best advocates for any community are the residents of the community. And so if they're having a good time here and they're telling people about what they're enjoying about living here, more people will come here. And so that is a big part of what we do at the Visitors Bureau, is we take those dollars and we put them right back out there. One of our biggest events that we support, the biggest event that we support, as far as sponsorship dollars, is coming up in about 2 weeks, and that's the Keystone State Games. What I didn't know until I took the position as the executive director of the Visitors Bureau is that there's a lot of counties in Pennsylvania that would love to have the Keystone State Games, because what they do for Luzerne County is they bring in somewhere between $3 and $4 million a year into our economy, with all the athletes that stay here, the families that stay here, the hotels that they stay at, and then they visit our restaurants and our attractions. And so that's what we do. We try to maintain those relationships. And I have meetings with the Keystone folks all the time and try to make sure that they don't go anywhere else, because they did leave here for a while and they were down in York, if you recall. But now they're back and it looks like they're going to be here for quite a while. These are all parts of what we do at the Visitors Bureau that I don't know if the general public or even maybe some of yourselves really understand. It's more than just having a little lobby where you come in and get a pamphlet about Ricketts, Glen. Not to diminish that. It's a big part of what we do. But the outreach that we do in our community and the events that we support is a big part of our work. The Visitors Bureau back only 3 years ago did a survey with an outside agency, and they asked people to come here and people that live here what they thought some of our biggest attractions are. And I often give, I often go over to the HR department twice a month or so, and I talk to the new hires. And I tell them similar things to what I'm telling you right now, basically. And I'll ask them, so I'll ask you, does anybody have any idea, if they could guess what the #1 attraction in Luzerne County might be for people coming outside the area?
Pizza, isn't it?
What?
Pizza?
Oh, that's mine.
The river?
The river is on the list, certainly kayaking, yeah. Ricketts Glen, yeah. Our trails, our state parks, are #1. When I took this job, I started talking to some of my family outside of the area, and I was sharing with them some of the information I learned, and I didn't realize that everybody knows Ricketts Glen. You go down to Philadelphia, they know Ricketts Glen. My family from Allentown knows Ricketts Glen. And so you combine that, and the survey showed that some of the top attractions were not only Ricketts Glen, but other things that you would expect: the casino, the Kirby Center, the arena, Eckley's Miners Village, Hillside Farms, all of our outdoors. And what it does collectively, and this does surprise people, is even though we don't have a beach and we don't have the Empire State Building or the Liberty Bell, tourism in Luzerne County brings in a typical year over $1 billion into our economy. And so that's what we do over at Visit Luzerne County. We foster that, we promote that, we celebrate that. And a lot of our marketing actually goes outside of Luzerne County, as you would imagine, because that's where we'll take out the ads and so forth. On your desk, I left for you prior to the meeting a copy of our visitor's guide. We publish 100,000 of those every year, and we distribute those not so much around here, although you will find them in the hotel lobbies because that's a good place for them, obviously, but at rest stops, at rest centers, at visitor centers outside of our region. That's, like I said, a lot of our marketing is done outside of the county to get people to come here, to keep those attractions coming. Another thing that I put on your desk for you is one of our latest projects, which is the new Luzerne County Beer Trail. This just came off the presses pretty recently, so don't pick it, you might get some ink on your hands. I'm only kidding. That was an initiative that we took on this year because of a state grant from the LCB. So it was a $40,000 grant that came our way from the state to promote the Luzerne County Beer Trail. So we worked with all of our local craft breweries. We talked to them. We got they gave us their specialties, what they liked the most, what they wanted to talk about the most about what they do. And now we have a comprehensive guide for anybody that would like to visit that trail. Although I often kid around with it that we don't encourage anybody to do it all on the same day. Maybe stop and have one and sample it and come back the next week.
Unless you get a bus.
Yeah, a bus would be fun. That's a good idea. There's also a television campaign coming up this summer with the Beer Trail grant that we didn't use all the money on the pamphlet. That was only a percentage of it. So there's still quite a few dollars left. So you're going to be seeing some things on WBRE TV, on PA Live, and on WYLN. The biggest event with the Visitors Bureau, well, there's just two things. First of all, our Rock and River events are the only events that we actually present ourselves. The other events that I mentioned, obviously Fine Arts Fiesta, Tomato Festival, Cabasa Festival, Pierogi Festival, Fun Fest. I was just at the Giants Despair, another event we sponsor. They are people that come to us with events and say, would you help us? Would you help us, give us some funding to help make sure, and we're happy to do that. That's what we're here for. But Rock and the River is a little bit different. They're ours. So we put those on ourselves with a lot of help from other county departments, the Sheriff's Department, the Building and Grounds Department, the Roads and Bridges Department. We all work on it together with community partners, Mountain Productions, a couple of major sponsors, City of Wilkes-Barre, Geisinger, and really put on something that everybody enjoys. So I encourage you all to come to Rock and the River if you've never been to them before. It's a beautiful setting over at the Susquehanna, right here behind the courthouse. And we have 3 great nights of music coming up. The biggest thing that's happened to the Visitors Bureau this year was years in the making. I stepped in last July when it was already well underway. And that is our move from Public Square to the historic train station off of Wilkes-Barre Boulevard. I have become an expert on the history of the building because so many people come in that want to learn more about it. So I've researched it, and I can tell you that it was built in 1868. That train station, that it was a very busy train station until 1963, where some of the finest Pullman passenger cars ran out of there from New York to Philadelphia to Scranton. The passenger car ceased in 63, but it still remained a freight train station until 1972. I had assumed when I saw that closing date of 1972, what most of us would, that it probably did not recover from the flood. It's not true. It actually closed in March of 72. I just found that out recently as I continue to learn more about it. It then sat empty for about 8 years. And then in 1980, it became the station, which a lot of us might remember as the popular restaurant, bar, and nightclub. And most of the people that come in to our office, we have some folks that come in that actually took trains out of there and say, I remember leaving here, going to visit somebody. And so if you, plenty of people still in 70s and 80s years old that took passenger cars out of there. But for the most part, most of the people that come in remember the bar. And they talk about how they met their wife there or their husband there, or they saw this band there. And so that's a part of the history too that a lot of people remember. That closed in around 2005, and it sat empty again for another 15 years. I like to tell people it's a tough old building because it has a couple, this is its second comeback. First, it was pretty dilapidated in the 70s and it became a beautiful nightclub and restaurant. And then it was in pretty bad shape again as recently as 18 months ago. And now it is the new home of the Luzerne County Visitors Bureau. I'm going to show you some pictures of it now and put together a little slideshow for you. Hope to have them in the order that I start, so I might go back. Yeah. Okay. So this is Luzerne County is now at the train station right over on off of Wilkes-Barre Boulevard. Local photographer took this picture very shortly after we moved in, and we just love this photo. If you remember what that building looked like as recently as 15 months ago, it's pretty remarkable. This was a picture that we took in the springtime, shortly after we moved in. I'm sorry, the wintertime actually. Probably took this picture in early February, and that's the picture that you will see in the visitor's guide on page 2. The lobby of the visitor center was something that we put a lot of thought into. Even though it's on the National Register of Historic Places, and there are a lot of people, especially train buffs, that are coming in because they're interested in the train history, we're not a museum. And I didn't want people to think we are a museum. We have a historical society in Wilkes-Barre. We have a preservation society in Wilkes-Barre. And so what we wanted to do is pay a little bit of a homage to the history of the train station. So if you come in, these are very large canvas prints of the train station from about 100 years ago with huge steam engines parked in front of it. But just as important is that this is a place where you come to learn about what to do today. So as you will see, and I'll show you on some of the other slides, is a poster of Susquehanna. There's a poster of folks kayaking down the Susquehanna. These are all pamphlets on things to do here at the Luzerne County Visitors Guide, brochures. The other wall. This is another magnificent picture of the train station with a steam engine in front. Some of our history with the Wyoming Monument, the Denison House, the Sweatman Home, 44 Meeting House, Rock in the River, Eckley's Miners Village, Mohegan Sun Arena, the F.F. Kirby Center. So when people walk into our lobby, these are the things that they see. This was a gift to us. Someone donated this to the Visitors Bureau. It's a beautiful quilt we got hanging in our lobby. As you can see, the courthouse is in the center of it. It celebrates some of the other historic structures here in Luzerne County. This is one of our favorite parts of the lobby of the Visitors Bureau. This covers one of our doors. This is about 7.5 feet tall, and this is basically a photograph that we purchased from Getty Images of Ricketts Glen State Park. And so, as you'll see in one of the other pictures, when you come into the lobby, your eyes are drawn to this. This is the way the room is set up. So we knew this was important. So we put our #1 attraction right in the center. It's a bigger picture of the team today. interesting. I love that picture. Probably why it's really like. So when you come into our lobby, you'll see here, you'll see all these brochures, and this is everything from kayaking to outdoors to history, anything that any of you might have interest in, the museums, trails, all these literature is there, our visitors guide is there. In the middle of the room, that's what I put that I showed you earlier, is the Ricketts Glen waterfall. We also want to make sure that the college students who come into town realize this is a place for them, and especially their parents, who might come and drop the kid off at Kings or Wilkes and realize I'm going to spend a lot of time in Luzerne County the next 4 years. And so we are a place for them. So we created this special poster and had it framed in our lobby just for the students that are there. This is the other wall, and as you can see some of the other things that we have here. We celebrate the penguins, and the rail riders, and Mr. Peanut. We have some people that want to get a picture taken with Mr. Peanut, which we love to do. Some people like to have their picture taken with the train station behind them. And this is an interesting little piece that we found when we were decorating the lobby. We found it on eBay, actually. And what's interesting about that, I think I have a picture that's closer, is it actually says the Central Railroad of New Jersey on it, which was the name of our train station. And so when the train bus come in, and we had 2 carloads of guys came down from Binghamton, New York one day. They were just there because it used to be a train station. They were train enthusiasts. And they were out in our parking lot with their cell phones, taking videos, taking pictures in the lobby. And so we did want to have a little bit of a homage to the history of the building. And this was a nice little find. Our road did not have a name. If you're familiar with the road that cuts between Northampton Street and East Market Street, it didn't have a name. And so I asked the developer of the property, George Albert, last fall. I said, "What's the name of this street?" He said, "It doesn't have one." I said, "Well, it should." You know, because basically in these days of GPS, if you use the old address, 33 Wilkes-Barre Boulevard, your car would have been saying you arrived at your destination and you would have been out in the middle of the road. And so I wanted them to come right into the parking lot. And so we worked with the county and the city and the 911, and we were able to get it pretty easily. And so the old train station now sits proudly on Old Train Station Road, and there will be more development on that street road in the years to come. And they will also carry that address as well. So this is something new that we're kind of proud to have had handy. Our latest addition to the train station, and this is why you all haven't been invited over yet. I don't believe, officially anyway, I know some of you stopped in. I don't believe in having company until your house is in order. And even though the inside, as you had just seen, has looked magnificent since the day we opened on February 14th to the public, the outside was still waiting for a few things. Because of a state grant that we received last fall, through Senator Udicek, who actually pushed it towards us, we were able to purchase a brand new digital sign that is outside the train station. This just went up about a week ago. They're running the power to it now. This is 14 feet high. This is 14 feet tall. As you can see, even the little, put some thought into the detail, even the little support things here that hold it up match the original support beams from 1868, has a train on it. And the most important thing is that this is a 3x7 digital display. So we will be able to promote all of our events happening in the county 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on this. So Rockin' the River will be on here. Tomato Festival will be on here. Fine Arts Fiesta will be on here. Good Luck Penguins in the playoffs will be on here. Whatever's going on, if we have a big concert at the arena, we can say, Luzerne County, welcome, share, whoever it might be. And so this is something that we're really proud of. You see these steel beams here? They just went up. They're going to be beautified. There will actually be bricks that will be put around them to hide them and match the look of the building. And that's going to be happening shortly. So I was waiting on this to have an official ribbon cutting ceremony with all of you invited, and of course the county manager invited, and our local people from the chamber and the cities, and the mayors. And we're looking at doing that in a couple of weeks, hopefully in early August. We're working on a date now. I just want to make sure that this thing is looking 100% good before we do that. Everything else, inside and out, we're very happy with. There was just some nice landscape. So that's kind of an overview. I also gave you, in addition to the visitor's guide and the Fear Trail, an editorial that I wrote a few months ago to note our 25th anniversary and our move to the train station, as well as the schedule for Rocking the River. And we'd love to see you all down there at the shows. Questions for me about the Visitors Bureau?
Thank you so much, Mr. Stout.
Thank you.
Mr. Stout,
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for all your hard work. You've done a great job so far. And I use the trails all the time. I've been to Rockin' the River before. I love what you guys have done with the train station. It's beautiful. It's one of the reasons why I decided to run for county council. And I'm very glad that there's someone as passionate as you in that office right now. So thank you so much for all your hard work.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lombardo. I appreciate that. Overwhelmingly, the people that come into the train station are just so happy that the building was saved. We hear that all day long, you know, and a lot of that credit goes to George Albert, who saved the building and renovated the building. We'll take the compliments on the inside if they like what we did with it, which you just saw. But overall, just the fact that it was saved, you know, was something that I know the county had a lot to do with years ago before I got on board, Mr. Albert. And I can tell you on behalf of the people of the county, they really appreciate it. It's a crown jewel here, and it's a historic building, and you know, we're privileged to work in there every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Robertson, did you have anything else to add?
Well, I did for 2 minutes. I didn't know I was going to do this, so I will be impromptu. But I'm sitting here with you all, fat, dumb, and happy, doing my thing. And a member of the illustrious press said that something, and I'll ask for some elaboration. I don't have Facebook. I've never had Facebook. I will never have Facebook. I don't do Facebook. And I think I told you all that when I interviewed. I've been in assignments where you just don't do that. If you knew what I knew, you wouldn't do Facebook either, I think, but that's up to you. But apparently someone has said something about a hiring action that the county has made. I don't make hiring actions, at least at the level that is being referred to. I trust my leaders to make the proper hiring actions. So an assistant to somebody is not one that I would make a public announcement for. If that division department head decides to do that, that's up to him. And that person has not joined us, so until it becomes official, which will be, I guess, next week. I don't know. I was told they were still waiting to, the last I heard. But I will tell you, this one is in the elections department. I met the young lady for about a half an hour, a week and a half ago. She had been vetted, not by me. I'm not the selecting official. There's a panel to include the department head of the Department of Elections, or the Bureau of Elections, whatever we call it. And they went through several lists, and apparently we have rotated deputies like Carter rotates liver pills. We went through 3 or 4 within the last year. That's shameful. It speaks volumes to, in my opinion, you can differ with me, and I'm sure there's some who will, but we need some stability there. And so our job is to hire the best and brightest we can get. No questions in my mind. This young lady was brought to me only for the sake that they said, Robertson, you want to know this because this young lady apparently has been a council member or is a council member in Wilkes-Barre. I said, fine. Is that the protocol? I'll be happy to meet her. I don't even remember her last name. That's how much it meant to me, because we do not do politics inside City Hall. I don't ask anyone their political persuasion. No one has asked me mine either, except some of the press before I ever got here. We hire the best and brightest. This young woman is getting a PhD. And if anyone would protect the sanctity of an election, it would be to me and elected official, which means to me, I have a great deal of confidence that this person will do absolutely everything and not impugn herself or the Luzerne County. So if I violated any protocol by not making an announcement about an assistant to a deputy, so be it. I won't bring that to you normally, but if there is something unique to this county, I have told you everything I know. And I will tell you in my meeting with her, she said, you might take some flack for this. I'm fine with that. We want to hire the best and brightest. We want your sons and daughters on that bottom of our sticker. It says we're an affirmative action, equal opportunity employer. We don't ask what political persuasion you are, what race you are, what color you are. We don't care. We hire the best that we can hire. And we've been through too many to have any questions of this. But she did offer, if it becomes hard for you, I'll resign. I said, I'll be in front of you. So guys and girls, you hired me to come in and help move this county forward. I'm doing the best I can. And I understand I may make some people angry, but that's the way we're going to head. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Okay, the next, again, to the county manager, we have the county manager reports for June 2022. They're attached. I don't know if you want to speak to them or if you want to just.
I will tell you the only thing very briefly is I met with department and division heads the first time I'm here. I think we provide you just reams of data. We kill trees on top of trees. And a lot of this, particularly like with Mr. Rokovich, the prison, just details that he should know and the state should know and things that really don't think. So we're going to be working through this. What is the essential elements of evaluation you need to know? And I will help if we do something that you don't like, tell me. But I'm going to try to get this down to a much lighter weight over time, because a lot of it is things I might need to know or things the department head or division chief might need to know. But it's not necessarily page after page of how many people we processed on a given day or how many shots we administered in the hospitals or the prisons, et cetera. I started picking on him because I think he had like 8 pages of data, and we're going to work through that. So thank you, ma'am. Subject to your questions, that's where we're going to try to head.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. We have no questions. We'll move on to number 2 or 3, discussion regarding resolution authorizing the county manager to renegotiate the sales agreement between Luzerne County and Castillo Real Estate LLC for the former juvenile detention center property. Ms. McDermott, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll give a little background to the new council members. Back in 2020, we put out an RFP to see if anyone would be interested in purchasing the juvenile detention center. And we received one from Mr. Castillo. So on November 24th, 2020, council voted to sell the juvenile detention center for $50,000. Now, if anybody has seen it or not seen the juvenile detention center, it does need a lot of work. I did go through there and I did put a hazmat suit on, and that just tells you the situation of it. But Mr. Castillo stepped up and said, I want to make this, a great place, have businesses here, possibly people live here, and put it on the tax rolls. And that's what's important to Luzerne County, is that we try to sell the properties, get them off of our insurance, also do a maintenance on that. I believe that we're paying some electricity to have security there. So we're wasting money on that. And if we could sell it and have someone improve it, and then we put it on the tax rolls and bring some money in, that's a big thing. The work that has been done or needs to be done, I know that it needs to be subdivided or is in the process of being subdivided because it is part of or on the same deed as Luzerne County Correctional Facility. So that, I don't know, I think you went across. Yeah, that was approved. So that was something that had to be done. And as you know, that costs money to do that. And now the problem is with the sewer line or just, and okay, just the sewer line that does run through the Luzerne County Correctional Facility. And so that needs to be separated. And Mr. Plesh had gotten, I guess, just a rough bid of maybe $80,000 to $100,000 to do it. Mr. Castillo came back and said, I could do it for less. And so you did put an offer in for $30,000, I believe, right? Is that where we're at? I'm not sure if that was 100%.
Was what we were going to fix it in sewer for. And you have given a very good presentation in summary of the situation. I am Joe Serrano. My office represents the Castillos who Serrano. Well, the microphone isn't plugged in.
No, there's a little,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
It works for the public.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I am Joe Tirana. I will speak for a few minutes at least. I am the older brother of Angelo, and Angelo told me that I'd be here for about 5 minutes tonight. So I'm gonna have some fun when I see him in the morning. No, my family, the older brother gets the brunt of it, I think. But the Castillos are here, though I'll say that they are youthful and vigorous. They've had a lot of experience in the city of Wilkes-Barre. They are entrepreneurs. Their most famous endeavor is Margarita Azul, a restaurant down in Wilkes-Barre that's very well thought of in the city. As was mentioned, there was an offer to actually give the juvenile detention center to the city of Wilkes-Barre, I believe, for storage, and the city of Wilkes-Barre came back and said it was going to cost them $1 million to renovate the structure so that they would be able to insure it. The Castillos came in and have made this offer. They are confident that they are going to be able to reinvigorate the building. When we have been going through our due diligence, and there was the subdivision that came up, and we were able to subdivide it off, of course, from the prison. The problem that we're facing now, though, is that we had a line, we had the sewer line scoped, and there are some serious problems with it. I'm happy somebody from the prison is here, because the sewer line from the juvenile prison goes actually through the yard of the adult prison. And we are going to have to do work on our sewer, but the prison or either the prison staff, the administration, or the board has decided, and rightfully, I believe, that they do not want to give up an easement, which we would need to actually run through the prison yard itself. And what the prison has suggested, and what the county, I think, is suggesting, is now that we create a new, or dig out a new sewer line that would actually skirt the actual prison and go around it. And as a part of our due diligence, as I said, both we and the county hired A&E to get an idea of what it would cost for the county to do that sewer line for somebody else or for us. And frankly, that number did come in at about $82,000 for what the county would have to pay for that. Mr. Castillo took a look at it and said, what would it cost us to do it? And then we would just sort of look at reducing our rate down. And the number that we have come up with is approximately $26,000 and some odd $100 to do that. So what we are suggesting is, instead of leaving the agreement of sale open or vitiating it, instead of the county going through and spending the money that the county has found out they would need to do on the sewer, if simply you'll allow us a reduction in the amount of the purchase price, and we could move forward with the agreement of sale and hopefully to closing. Mr. Manager, we're happy to have you here. This is probably, we're on the second or third. This started in the days of Mr. Pedri, and I'm sure the board has been up and involved in this. We'd love to have you down in the restaurant, first of all, to come down and see us. But if you want to take a look and discuss this project, we would love to have your input as well. So.
Practical idea.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Toronto. Yes, sir. What purchase price are you proposing at this time?
It would be $30,000.
So
we take that. Yeah, we would eat some of the 26,000. We would.
That's what I'm trying to get to. You're only asking for 20,000, even though you think it's going to be 26,000.
Right. I think Mr. Castillo doesn't want to sit here anymore tonight, so we'll just cut to the chase.
Did you guys say you can leave for us to make.
Yeah,
Keep his restaurant open.
Yeah.
They have done a great job with that restaurant.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Very nice addition to the.
I just want to say, I promise you, guys, I think the same thing that this guy, you just give me, that thing I go all the time. I'm down the block, I will make you guys proud. I won't make nobody regret it. I won't mess up my reputation. And I'll do the right thing, like I said.
You've done the right thing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Farrar.
No, thank you for your patience tonight. Now you could come every 2 weeks and enjoy the same. No, I just have a quick question. The sewer is a sanitary sewer, I assume?
Yeah.
Not a combined sewer like a lot of sewers are in Wyoming Valley?
No, it's not.
Okay, sanitary sewer alone, gravity fed, nothing forced.
Right.
And you're gonna branch off the sewer, the existing sewer before it gets to the plot of the yard and then go around the property and reattach to the same outflow on the other end?
We've just seen a few, basically, I'm sorry. This is,
okay.
I think it's going to River Street now though, right?
Well,
Instead of,
Sometimes the
instead of Water Street, it's going to
DEP gets
River.
involved when there's sanitary sewers involved.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I heard.
That's us. Yeah.
But it's going to River, right? Instead of,
No, it looks like it's.
No.
still
you are
connected
going
to
Water
Street.
Oh, we're going back down to Water?
Patch those out, yeah. Yeah, the way it goes is I think and that is the problem, that it goes right through the
320 linear feet. So the $50,000 suggested sale price would just be reduced down to 30,000?
That was not the suggestion, that's what we agreed to
Okay, all right.
Right.
Oh, that was in the old days, I guess.
last year.
Yeah, that's the old days.
That is the old days.
For some of us.
Well, for me,
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you guys for this. You guys have any other questions on this? If not, we'll move on. Discussion regarding ordinance amending the capital plan budget for Luzerne County. Thank you guys for
Yeah,
coming.
thank you.
You guys want to head out now?
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Mr. Swets, are you speaking to number 4?
Yeah.
Sure.
Great.
No problem.
Number 3.
Number 3, it's okay.
You moved it to 4 because we added.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Sorry.
So on the capital plan budget, obviously next meeting, the auditors will be here. They'll go over the whole audit and the details and have a presentation. There's a suggestion made, an email sent out to move 2 million of the $4.8 million surplus of capital fund. I worked with the Office of Law to get the GL number and do the same thing we did in the past. As of right now, and it's just work session, so it could be changed, but our thought was that that would be in that unencumbered project line, and then council can give it to future projects. That's what we thought the intent was. So I worked with Mr. Skeen in his office, got the stuff on the agenda, and we'll make sure it's ready to go for the voting. We've done it before. We did, I think, 2 years ago. So it's the same process, just not coming from the reserve, coming from last year's audit surplus.
I asked Council Chair Mr. Robertson to review this and look at it, hopefully put it on the agenda. We do need to add money into the capital fund, where we have 276,000 or something.
It's less than 300,000, so yes.
So that's, as you can realize, that's a very small amount. You consider the facilities, things that we need to operate. You know, if we have one roof blown off somewhere, we're going to be $1 million. We don't have it in the capital fund. So, you know, $2 million, that's subject to how people feel, but that's like 40% or so of what we anticipate when we budget, out of the budget. I think it's a good number to start with. We can always consider other numbers, but I think that's a reasonable number, and obviously that gives us an opportunity to maybe add some projects in the capital budget that we know we need. $276,000. We're not going to be able to add to. This might be an opportunity to do some other work.
Thank you, Mr. McGinley. Do any council members have questions on that? Correct. election check is Mr. Chomp.
Dave Chomp, West Pittston. So in regards to the West Nanticoke Bridge, I still haven't heard anybody mention an official inspection report. I heard a lot of anecdotal stories and talk, and the county engineer said it looks like it's in bad shape, but nothing official. So I think it would behoove us before we make any kind of move on this bridge is to do an official inspection such as is being done with the Water Street Bridge and find out exactly where the bridge is at. Just because it was built in 1919 doesn't necessarily mean it's about to fall over. I mean, it could have a number of years left, enough years to possibly put it on PennDOT's list to have it replaced like they're doing with the two Pittston bridges. Okay, I would like to finish my letter that I was reading about Miss Williams and the letter that she wrote. And before I was cut off, I was at this point. I would love for Miss Williams to tell us how anyone could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person who signed the mail-in ballot is the same person who filled it out. Or please tell us how we can be 100% certain that people are not dropping multiple ballots in drop boxes, thereby breaking the law and leaving the election process vulnerable to ballot harvesting. Who in the Election Bureau is a certified signature analyst that could possibly match signatures? We need to eliminate the guesswork and absurd complexities of mail-in voting and place election integrity above convenience every time. Also, why is it all of a sudden now more convenient to seek out and drive to a drop box rather than simply putting it in your mailbox? According to Ms. Williams and what she said at a recent meeting, this is partly because a lot of people are worried that someone may see their signature on the envelope, like the mailman or the clerk at the post office. In-person, same-day voting with a proper ID and no ballot drop boxes. It's the only way that we can guarantee the integrity of our elections 100%. Absentee hardship ballots under strict guidelines should also remain in place like they have been. Anything else is inviting the widespread possibility of fraud and manipulation. We should make it state law and remove any possible doubt as to the outcomes of our elections. Integrity over convenience every time. And before I leave the podium, I would just like to say to Ms. Radel, I've been observing these meetings for quite some time, and there's an incredible amount of time wasted at these meetings. For you to abruptly cut off the two people at 3 minutes, I find it very petty. I mean, it's almost like you're trying to discourage public involvement.
Thank you.
There were two of us that spoke.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Mr. Griffin?
Greg Griffin, Swarsville, Council Lady McDermott. We correspond on email, and apparently there's approximately 191 properties that could be sold out, county properties. So I think it's very important that we expedite this, where it's a solicitor or assessor's office or someone be delegated to expedite the sale of these 191 properties for tax revenue. So there's rumors of a tax increase next year. Our last manager said that we couldn't avoid it for 22. And that's one of the reasons why there was a lot of opposition to her. Of course, as a member of the People's Committee, we would not permit a tax increase regardless. But if there's 191 properties that have not been sold to create tax revenue, it's going to be an argument from the people that you don't need a tax increase if you're sitting on 191 properties. So someone has to be delegated to go through these deeds and get them off the county rolls, because the taxpayers want those properties to be producing income, so the tax burden is less on the senior citizens who have to pay the full boat. So This is what we're looking for from the real estate committee. We would look for a report maybe next 2 weeks about who you contacted to expedite the examination of the 191 properties and what's going to be done about it. And we'll just keep asking about it because this is a very big issue. We're losing a lot of tax revenue. Thank you.
I can respond a little bit to that. Now, with 222 marketable properties, like 114 of those have deeds, 108 don't. Now, those numbers may have changed because I did just get a more updated list. If they don't have deeds, then we have to go to the court and get a deed. With the properties that are out there, it doesn't mean that it's a really marketable property. It could be, in the case of Mrs. Tony, that we just, authorized her to advertise tonight. It's not enough to build on. It's not enough to do anything with. It's just if someone that lives next to it is interested in it. And as you can see, she's put in a minimal bid of $600. And that's mostly what we're getting on these little pieces of property that, again, you can't do anything with them. Some of them are sloping. It's not that there's wonderful properties out there, because if they were really wonderful, they would have already been gone. They've already gone through the sheriff's sale or judicial sales and everything. And now they're just sitting there. I think people don't know about them. So that's a question of maybe put them on the website so that people can take a look and just say, well, maybe that property is something that I'm interested in. But most of them are really not worth anything. However, we did talk about it at our last real estate committee meeting, and we need to come up with a plan of how to approach maybe adjacent property owners to see if they would be interested in purchasing it. It's a possibility. Some people are like, I don't want to take on any more tax. Why do I want to pay more taxes? But it could add to their property. So it is a possibility. It's just that they're not wonderful properties. So how do we market it?
Well, we have legal staff that are drawing the salary, solicitors, assessor's office employees. They need to be tasked and tell them to get on it and find out how we can get off these 191 properties. And, I'm a member of the community garden committee, Wilkes-Barre. There's 6 community gardens. A lot of these non-buildable might be delegated to a neighbor to start a community garden. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that could happen, but with the 191 sitting there, or per se, whatever it is, we got to be free of it. And, we have county employees that are drawing salaries that could be tasked with searching the deeds, getting it going. This is the inefficiency that citizens get.
We started with Dan Reese in the GIS department. He does have, some aerial views. He did gather information, and I did sit down with him and got a list of, with, I think it was like 27 properties of adjacent property owners, and that's as far as we got. So it's, it's something that we are working on. It's just a matter of, with everything that's going on, everything moves slow.
We're concerned about ghost properties that are not on the tax rolls, ones that just been built. The assessor's office, I don't know if they do drones or whatever they do, but we have to find the tax revenue on properties that have been built or not taxed. The assessor's office has to be challenged. What do they do all day?
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Any other members of the public? Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mention the post meeting adjourned.
It's rare that you can't get that.